This information shared in the episode is intended for general education and discussion only. While our guest, Tyler Stacy, is a licensed counselor, neither CJ nor ID Fitness provides professional counseling or therapy services. Always seek the advice of a qualified professional regarding any questions or concerns you may have about your emotional or mental health.
Welcome back to ID Fitness Podcast, where we explore what it really means to live a healthy mind, body, and spirit. Today, we're sitting down with Tyler Stacy, a marriage and trauma counselor from Oxford, Mississippi. Tyler opens up about a personal journey from finding his calling in marriage counseling to the lessons he's learned about connection, communication, and faith. We talk about what causes couples to drift apart, how to repair after conflict, and why so many of us try to express what we truly feel. Tyler also shares powerful insight into emotional regulation, stress, and deeper needs driving our behaviors, from relationships to addictions. Whether you're married, dating, or trying to grow as a person, this episode will give you a new lens on what it means to love well and live with intention. Let's jump into this conversation with Tyler Stacy. Tyler,
CJ.
welcome to ID Fitness Podcast.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and what prompted you to want to be more specific in marriage counseling.
Okay. Yeah, so my name's Tyler Stacy. I grew up in Jackson, and I guess from an early age, I remember being a teenager and thinking that I do not want to be roommates with the person I one day marry. So at that age, it became really important to me. I started thinking about, well, if I don't want to end up being roommates with the person I'm one day going to marry, what are the things I should be paying attention to now to be ready to be married? And so that was actually where that kind of passion began. But currently, I work as a marriage and trauma therapist in Oxford, Mississippi. But yeah, just from an early age, from around teenager, it popped in my head that that's not what I wanted.
Man, that you got that conviction so early.
I'll never forget it. I don't know why I did, but I just knew that whenever I got married, my wife and I were going to work stuff out as it came. I remember specifically, I don't want to be roommates with my wife.
Now, after that, when did you get married?
So, my wife is actually the only person I've ever kissed. And I was, gosh, was I 20? I'm 40 years old now. We were married. I'm so bad at math. I guess I was 25 years old when we got
Okay.
married. But so I went to school in Jackson. I went to Mississippi State, and then after that, I lived in Italy for a year, and that was where I met Jamie, my wife.
What?
And during that time, about 10 months in, is when we realized that when I first told her I liked her, she told me no, that she wasn't interested. But what happened was, long story short, we ended up getting married, and I had my first kiss. But yeah, I didn't date much or anything
Okay.
like that. I liked girls and had some girls that we kind of hung out. But my dad told me when I was probably 13 or 14, he said, Tyler, you're going to have the rest of your life to be married. Right now, just focus on having a ton of fun with your guy friends. Because once you get married, your focus is going to shift to your wife. So just enjoy time with your buddies while you have it. And that stuck to me as well.
That's really good advice too.
It was good.
To be present.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, to be present in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jamie and I met in Italy.
So why'd you go to Italy?
So it was with a group called Campus Crusade for Christ. It's called Crew now. But I was at Mississippi State and I was about to graduate and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. My family has a family business in Jackson. They sell commercial doors, frames, and hardware. Stuff maybe kind of like that.
Yeah.
But I knew I wasn't really in a spot to go right back to that. So then I got through an odd set of circumstances hooked up with that group that went to Salerno, Italy. And my wife just happened to be on the same team.
What?
And there's actually a photo of us 6 or so months before we met. We were both in Atlanta at the same time. And I'm like walking past her and a group of friends, and I'm in the background of a photo. And we found out we had been in the same room at another occasion, never met. She's from Orlando.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wow.
But dude, when I realized I liked her earlier in that year, I had made a commitment to myself. I had been friend zoning myself where I was real passive. When I liked somebody, I wouldn't really tell them. I just thought it would work out. But then at around 23, 24, I realized that did not work. So about 10 months before I knew I liked her, I had said, Tyler, next time you like someone, just tell the person immediately. That way you don't leave any room for vagueness and you're not wasting your time or their time.
Right.
And so we had been in Italy on our team for about 8 to 10 months. And Jamie, one night there were some people from America visiting, and I looked over and I saw her flirting with some dude, and he looked like a male model. And instantly I felt jealous. I said, Tyler, why are you jealous? Jamie can flirt with whoever she wants to. I was like, but it stuck with me. And then I started thinking, man, I think I like her. But I said, no, you can't. She's going to live in Italy for another year. At that time, I knew I was going back to Jackson. I said, no, 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 you can't. She's from Florida. You're supposed to marry someone from Mississippi. And then one night I woke up at 2 in the morning and out of my mouth, I said, I like Jamie. And after I said it out loud, that made it like
Real.
real. So at that point, I was like, well, you got to honor your commitment. So as soon as I could, I went and spoke with her, and I said, I was stuttering, I was sweaty. It was very, very embarrassing. She later said it was endearing, but I said that I liked her. It took me 5 minutes to get the words "I like you" out, but I told her I liked her, but she told me that she wasn't interested. And then I said, "Hey, totally understand. I just knew I needed to honor the commitment I'd made to myself." And I thought, I say it, she says no, then I could just move on. But like 3 or 4 weeks passed, and I had not moved on. And so I said, something's off. I said, I don't think she told me the truth. So I went and I approached her again and I said, Jamie, I could be totally wrong, but I don't think you told me the truth when you said you didn't like me. And then she got really upset and she said, Tyler, the truth is, I just don't know. And
Mm.
I said, it was like my dumb and dumber moment. I said, and I don't know is way better than a no. And I said, and we just left it at that. I found out later that the day she told me no, that she didn't like me, she went home that night and cried about it.
Mm.
And she felt convicted. She had a therapist that she talked to, and the therapist challenged her and said, Jamie, you lied to Tyler. And she felt very convicted about it, but she didn't know how to bring it back up to me. And the night before I approached her again, she had been up almost all night praying, Lord, please give us another opportunity to clear things up. And she said the next morning she was eating her breakfast. We were at like a conference thing. And she said she was eating her breakfast and she looked up and I was walking right towards her to tell her she had lied to me. So she said that. And then later she approached me and said, the truth is that she goes, I think I might maybe kind of like you. And I said, well, we should go on a date. And that's kind of how we got together.
That is so interesting. And just kind of like wrestling through that.
Yes. I also learned after the fact that she was afraid to tell me she didn't know because in the past, when she was uncertain about a relationship and she said that to some other dudes, they put a lot of pressure on her and tried to force her to, I need to know now. And obviously, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So when she said, I don't know, the truth is, I don't know. And I responded, I was like, it was Christmas morning. I was so excited that that was actually the truth. She didn't know. She said, when I said that's way better than a no, that she felt instant relief. And that actually opened her up to realize that she actually did like me because it removed so much pressure that she had. It was just kind of neat how it worked out like that.
What's interesting because I'm in the dating world,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's really fascinating hearing you talk because I'm in a position where I'm just getting to know, and I'm currently
Mhm.
just getting to know women.
Mhm.
And there's this one particular that I'm talking to, and every time she brought up a situation or something that she felt like they needed to talk, her
Mhm.
past experiences, she would not get any validation
Mhm.
or any response.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
she actually just shut down.
it could destroy, it could stop or end, it could totally end a
Yeah.
relationship.
So, and the reason why I bring that up, because I know me and you talked about this a little bit in your room. So talk about like, obviously you are starting to experience more in marriage counseling, and you've not only confronted your wife, like, listen, I do like you. And you wanted to like get the bear out of the room, like this is what's going on. How would you, in marriage, how would you do that? Like when somebody's in the room and you know that a partner's not validating them, or they're just not getting any response at all. They're listening to you, but there's no action behind it.
When I'm personally seeing a
Yeah.
client, so I am trained this model called emotionally focused therapy. And what that says is that people want to have what's called a secure attachment. And a secure attachment is something that doesn't just magically happen. You just described some things that I'll circle back to. Donald Trump calls it the we. I'm going to do a we. Okay. So there's three things that create a secure attachment. First, you have a connection with somebody. And when you're connected, it's all good. Everybody's on the same page. And then you have disruptive events that occur. And a disruptive event doesn't have to be like a negative thing or even a bad thing. It could even be something really good, like being starting a relationship with someone that you really like. That could still count as a disruption. So you're connected, disruptions occur, and then the third part is a repair. When you repair a disruptive event, it puts you back in a connected state. In order to form a secure attachment, you have to repair. I keep hitting this thing. You have to repair. So you're connected, disruptions like repair, 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 repair. The problem is people don't really know how to repair. So most people I'm seeing have not repaired things for very long periods of time. And underneath every whenever a disruption occurs, it's always viewed on an emotional level as a threat. It's a threat to the connection. So when threatened, people will protect themselves. And some people protect themselves by kind of shutting down, and other people will protect themselves by like amping up the energy. And uh in that example of my wife, like she would protect herself by pulling back and withdrawing, and the men dudes from her past would put pressure on her by go towards her. I need to know now. And that would put them in a disrupted state. And once you get stuck in a disrupted state, if you're not repairing it, then eventually it leads to the end of a relationship. Or it could, if people are in a marriage and divorce isn't an option, they just become roommates because they don't know how to actually repair. And so part of repairing is through validation. We can definitely talk more about that. But when you're connected with someone and when a disruption occurs, underneath every protection a person does, shutting down, yelling, dissociating, whatever it is a person's deepest longings for love, safety, security, connection. And a person only protects themselves when it doesn't feel like that longing is being met.
Yeah.
And so the way it works is we all have events from our past that haven't been fully repaired. And so when something doesn't get repaired, a person has to survive by protecting themselves. And when you protect yourself in a subtle way, you kind of harden yourself up in order to protect yourself from being hurt. And so a little boy, little girl, they're just freely living out their longings, but then difficult things start happening to them. It doesn't get repaired. So they just kind of harden, 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 and then they get in a relationship that could be awesome. But as soon as a disruption occurs in that relationship, people just pull all the same protections that they used to survive earlier life events. And now they're doing it in that current relationship. And if they don't know how to repair, they end up just recreating or adding some new ones on. And over time, it causes a massive disconnection to occur.
Yeah. It's so,
Is that answering your
yeah, that
question?
does. And what's
Okay.
interesting too is, do you see correlations as you're going down that? Do you see patterns that it's usually they start disconnecting however they do it is like, it's like the same thing? They either just shut down, or people having, do you feel like there's a correlation in that? Like, or they have anxiety, or they don't talk, or they yell and scream? Do they have a pattern of shutting down, or it just
We all
depends?
have our tendencies, but your tendencies, I call they're just like attachment injuries. So when a little child, let's just say a kid grew up in a super high conflict home that they never saw conflict get resolved. There's a lot of yelling or screaming. So that person could go one or two ways. They could say, I never want to experience that in my relationship. And what people tend to do when stuff doesn't get fully repaired is they can go to more extreme versions. So that person could go, oh, I don't want to ever experience that in my relationship. Therefore, I'm going to avoid anything that could be a conflict. So they might be more of a pullback, shutdown type person. But that same person could experience all that yelling and screaming and just do this, replicate the same thing in their relationship because that's what they were used to. So it could go a variety of ways. There's thousands of ways people kind of guard and protect themselves.
Yeah. And do you find it that with how they protect themselves, it's not really it's really context and situation of how they're going to use that tendency that they have? Like in other words, um, do you see like if somebody does pressure them, do they not only just yell at their wife? Do they yell at their boss? Do they yell at their kids? Is it
It
or there's really no correlation to that?
it can vary based on the relationship. The more important something is to somebody, the more quickly they'll flip to these protected type
Yeah.
states. So sometimes people in their job and they can go from one extreme to another. They might be in a job where they're very assertive and like the boss and in charge and this is what we do blank blank blank, but then inside their home, they might be overly passive or avoidant. And
Ah,
it could be for a variety of reasons. They're tired from the day, or it could be because that view of conflict, they might have a negative view of conflict, like it makes relationships worse. But for their job, for how they provide and take care of their family, they kind of have to do it. So it could people are just incredibly complex.
hmm.
There's multiple ways people do it. Like sometimes I'll be more assertive in a conflict, but sometimes I'll shut down. Like we can all do a host of different stuff.
That's so interesting too.
Yeah.
Oh, and going based off that, like, do you feel that there's people that I don't know would say that if somebody's being very like extreme, like yelling, not even yelling, like screaming, that it's just a deeper layer?
Uh Screaming and yelling, it's those are things that people do when they're like overly flooded or totally dysregulated. So people tend they usually don't start like that unless they're just like barely hanging on. They'll usually do a little deflection or say I don't want to talk about it or they'll do little micro type protections, but then after the pattern's always the problem. I want to be clear on that,
Okay.
but we could talk more about that too. But when a couple gets stuck in a pattern, they'll do all these things to protect. And one of the steps is it might result in yelling or more aggressive type behavior, but it usually doesn't just start with that. Sometimes it does. Like I
Yeah.
was seeing someone years ago and he said, I was talking to him about what their pattern was. He goes, well, we've done this so many times. I just start by just yelling at her because I know it's going to end up there anyway, just so I get it over with as soon as possible. They were totally stuck. But the pattern couples get stuck in is the major enemy of the connection and intimacy that they long for. And so when you're connected with someone and then when that connection gets threatened, people go to the fight, flight, or freeze or fawn. They have all these words for it. They go into that state, and at which point they become very reactive. And when someone gets reactive, they just go to whatever their tendency is and then when one person does it, the other one does too. And that's how they get stuck in a pattern. And then the longer they're stuck in the pattern, it's harder to get out of
Yeah.
it. And the thing that couples don't do enough of is they don't revisit those arguments or those times that it happened. And when they don't revisit it unintentionally, it just makes that pattern stronger. And that's what sucks the life out of a relationship if you're not repairing after a disruption or conflict occurs. And that's the thing I see most people don't repair.
Ah. That's so interesting that you said that too, because like after a big fight, it's actually important to go back to it and talk through
Mhm.
it when you're at a more of a calm state.
Yeah, because what happens is when there's a conflict, people start telling themselves things. I'm not a priority. They don't care about me. They don't appreciate all I do. They just start have thoughts like that. And if you don't revisit that conflict, those thoughts are still there.
Mm,
And those thoughts are attached to emotions and unmet needs. And so you're just accruing offenses on top of each other, and when it doesn't get repaired and cleared out, it just stacks and reinforces those negative thoughts about the spouse or even yourself.
yeah.
And so when you don't revisit to repair, you don't have any really productive way to fully reestablish your emotional connection with your spouse.
Yeah.
But people don't do it.
So like practically, what does that look like? Let's say, you know, you're married. Let's say you scream at your wife, she
Mm.
screams back, you guys are frustrated. How how would you give them a practical example of what that looks like of repairing that?
Well, I to me there are five. I've got this model I'm working on called the happy relationship model. And there's basically five things that can kill a relationship and five things that build it up. And so what happens is the five things that can kill or suck the life out of a relationship are criticism, avoidance, judging how your spouse feels, making assumptions, and then not having a process to repair. When difficulties occur, it's totally normal. It's natural to criticize or avoid or make assumptions or kind of judge. You shouldn't feel that way. That we all do that. The problem is if people don't have a process to fully reconnect, they just get stuck repeating versions of that over and over and over again. And the more they get stuck like that, it starts producing stuff, resentments, frustration, isolation, discontentment, uh, hopelessness. It just does not go well. So the five things that I believe repair that each person needs to do, or they got to revisit the conflict. They need to express appreciation for their spouse. Um, they have to validate the other person's and their own emotions. And then they need to clarify the misunderstanding that occurred. Because if two people are married and they made a vow before God and a commitment, whether they've explicitly talked about their goals as a couple or not, they literally made a vow that we're
Mm,
going to love each other in sickness and in health. And that covers a lot of stuff. And if they made that commitment to the relationship and something has occurred that drifts them away from that and they don't have a process to get that back, then they're going to get stuck. But if you're revisiting, clarifying, and validating, express appreciation, and repeating that over and over and over again, that's what creates the secure attachment. Most arguments couples get into are because of some type of misunderstanding that happened. But the problem is when that occurs, people jump too quickly to clarifying. That wasn't what I meant. You should think about it like that. I was really trying to do blank, blank, or blank. But when you jump to that too fast, it doesn't come across to your partner as if you're doing something good. It actually comes across as like you're invalidating or dismissing them. But so the problem I see is couples don't have a clear process for how to repair. No one showed them how to do it. No one really knows what that looks like. So that's the five things that my wife and I have been doing for 15 years. We hammer in that stuff. We know what we want. We don't want to be roommates. Divorce isn't an option. And so and we want to have a loving marriage where we enjoy each other because why wouldn't you want to make the most out of what you have?
yeah.
So we know we have something great. And whenever something happens that seems like it pushes us away from that, that's always an indicator. Oh, we got it. We need to revisit this because something has occurred and it's leaving me with thoughts that I do not want to have about this relationship. So if I don't take those captive and we put those to death through a connecting reparative conversation, that's just putting us in a vulnerable position. Because if we start stacking those on top of each other, next thing you know, we might have felt just that far apart, but in a month or a year or 10 years, we're feel like we don't even know each other.
Yeah. Man, you said something like that just connected with me so much. And I feel like that I see as well is when validating or apologizing and then immediately saying, I didn't mean like that and justifying that.
Mm.
I catch myself doing that too.
Oh, totally normal.
Even today, like had a client today and I caught myself doing it. And it's like, I'm like, you need to slow down.
Mm.
You need to apologize. You need to hear them and you just need to leave it. No
Mhm,
matter what
mhm,
the intent was, they're just saying how they feel.
mhm. Yes, and that's actually a great example. In the heat of the moment, it's next to impossible to catch a lot of this stuff. Because when someone gets activated or they feel pressure, like sometimes you'll see this with parents with children, or even in your profession where someone's coming to you for help, or in mine where people can feel pressure of like they're coming here, they need help. I better have the answer. And then if they're stuck in their emotions, the tendency is like, well, you shouldn't think that. Like, believe this, but that comes across as invalidating. But what happens is if you're noticing pressure, you're being anybody, it can hijack your ability to truly listen to what the other person's saying. And when that happens, you're just reactive and people just resort to their tendencies. Some people blank face, some people just correct the thought. Um, but that's what happens if that's why it's so powerful to revisit because that stuff happens all the time. But and when that happens, I don't necessarily hold people majorly responsible because that just happens. But once you're aware of what happened, that's when I do think an individual has responsibility because you can revisit.
Yeah.
So I'll miss and make mistakes in my job. I'll in my marriage with my children, but we have a commitment to revisiting. Because when you revisit it, it's you've already slowed down. If you slow down enough to even catch, man, I missed that. It's always an opportunity to deepen that emotional connection.
Yeah.
But people don't do that because life, they get distracted or whatever. And it's hard to do it because it requires you to be extremely intentional.
And your listening power, just learning to be a good listener.
Mm,
I think that's what had me thinking. Now, we talked about in marriage, and obviously there are probably people out there who are struggling with repairing a coworker relationship
mm,
or just a person who's difficult.
mm,
Like it's not, I'll just give you an extreme example just because I had a client go through this where it's just like this person at my job is just difficult.
mm,
And it's not just me. It's 15 other people in the office think the same thing. We all avoid this person. They're very toxic. Every time we try to repair,
mm.
obviously they use different words, but they try to
Yeah.
repair it's all about them.
Mm.
Like, when do you know it's not safe to repair with a person? It's just like, hey, like, I just need to keep my distance from them because they're trying to harm me, not hurt me, but trying to harm me.
Yes. Well, that's where it's not wrong to protect yourself. Protections are things that we develop to survive legit difficult situations. Like if someone experienced physical abuse, it's right to protect yourself. It becomes a problem if you're protecting yourself in situations that don't actually warrant it. And so if you're in a relationship with a coworker or something and they're not willing to have those clarifying, connecting conversations. It's not wrong to protect yourself. What I would be paying attention to is how am I going about protecting myself? Am I protecting myself in a way that I'm uh, in a grounded, uh, more of a longing state with myself as I'm protecting myself? Or am I doing it out of like anxiety or bitterness? Because if I'm doing it out of that, I'm just going to add to it.
Mm,
And so it's much like Jesus when he never left the longing state. Underneath every protection is a person's deepest longings. That's like who I believe the true person is their longings. Um, Jesus had Judas in his midst. He knew what Judas was going to do, but Jesus never left his longing state. And that's what I believe as Christians we're called to do is very difficult to do. But it's not wrong to protect yourself, set up boundaries. Boundaries help prevent you from developing resentments and bitterness. And it totally takes a toll on you. Boundaries protect relationships and they create safeguards for people who might not be willing to have those type of necessary repair conversations.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge to be in a position where you know you're walking into an environment that's not safe. And that's where it becomes you a person can be connected with themselves, God, and others. So at that point, if being connected with that other person in that deeper way is not an option, you can still do what you need to do to be connected with God and with yourself. And you can learn how to navigate that situation in a way where you can still be true to who God has created you to be, despite whatever type of behaviors they're doing. And that could look like a firm conversation, or it could like distancing yourself in order to protect that. I'm not giving a specific answer because I don't know anybody's situation, but I would just be considering, am I doing this in a way, am I approaching this boundary from a loving point that's, I know I'm kind of rambling.
No, this is good.
Paul David Tripp has a definition, and he says, love is the willing self sacrifice for the good of another that doesn't demand reciprocation or that the one being loved is deserving.
Mm.
The key words in that definition to me is for good. If you take that out, it's essentially enabling. It would be love is the willing self sacrifice for another that doesn't demand reciprocation or that they're deserving. That's just you're enabling. But if I always ask myself, is what I'm about to do, whether it's with my work, in my marriage, or with my kids, is it for the ultimate good? Is it for the ultimate good that for me to say yes to something that I don't agree to? Is it for the ultimate good for me to do something for that person that they're capable of doing for themselves? Is it for the ultimate good for me to overtake responsibility for someone else's stuff? And if it's not for the ultimate good, I say no. But if it's for their ultimate good, and then you choose to self sacrifice yourself for the ultimate good of another person, that's very loving. But people confuse that big time.
Yeah. I love that definition. I love
It's
Tripp.
great.
Man, it's
He's awesome. He's awesome.
and just hands down, I mean, it's
And his mustache.
his mustache. I totally forgot about his mustache.
Dude, the mustache. It's incredible.
That probably sets the tone because you're just like, there's no way this guy can pull off these definitions. And you see the mustache is like, that's him. Now, how would what do you think the challenge is when you're going through like a marriage counseling session and you're noticing the couples, either one or both, are just enabling each other, taking over responsibility, doing stuff they shouldn't be doing for each other? Like, how do you, obviously context situational, but from a broad view, how do you build awareness in that?
I always put it back into the pattern. So we all have individual responsibilities for the things that we do and say, but at the same time, it's the pattern that people get stuck in that reinforce those negative behaviors. So if a couple has a fuller understanding of the pattern that they're stuck in, then it empowers them to then do things to get them out of that pattern, at which point some of the negative behaviors or thoughts kind of start to resolve themselves. And so I spend most of my time helping couples understand their pattern, what is driving it, how it drive forces them further away to start to develop a mutual dislike for this pattern that we're stuck in. Because if a couple can say, we don't like this pattern, we don't want to keep doing this anymore, that already puts them more on the same page. Because now it's like, we are going to address this pattern together. This Tyler dude or my marriage therapist, that person is there to help us pick up on things that we might not be able to see. So we're all working together to interrupt that pattern because we know what we want. We want to feel connected. We want to be able to repair. And so when some people are stuck, and we all get stuck, my job is more to help the couple flesh out and fully understand what all is happening in that pattern, and then have conversations where they feel like they're coming closer and closer together. When you're stuck in a pattern, it leaves you feeling further and further apart. So I view it a win in a therapy room if as a couple's talking about something, they've come closer together. And then once you get that, it's like, oh, I know what that feels like. Let's keep replicating this at home, closer together. Ooh, when that happened, I felt further apart. What happened? Let's break it down closer together. Because that's the ultimate goal, to becoming closer and closer together.
Yeah, I like that too because you're going more towards the root.
The root.
Yeah. I love there's something said to go after the fruits, in other words, like the symptoms, but you can attack it from both sides.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I'll to me, a person's actions and behaviors, those are just a pathway to get to the deeper stuff. So it's like, I, how do I say it? Say someone is struggling with alcohol. I'm not a trained addiction specialist therapist. This is just how I approach it. If someone's struggling with alcohol, I view that as a behavior that they become dependent on. So we talk about that, but more we spend our time talking about the need that the alcohol is meeting for them. And if it's meeting the need for relief or comfort, then we start to flesh that out, and they start to explore other ways to actually get that need met, but it doesn't leave them spiraling and more reliant on a substance. Anytime a person becomes over reliant on something to meet a need, like shopping, alcohol, porn, any type of even physical fitness, which isn't wrong at all. But anytime someone becomes over reliant on something to be the sole source of meeting a need other than God, they can become very vulnerable to over relying and depending on it. And especially if it's something like that can lead to disruption or difficulty, like overly using alcohol or Adderall or something, then you see that the more a person engages and becomes dependent on it, the worse their life and the people around them's lives get. So it doesn't produce ultimately anything good.
Yeah, I like that too because like obviously I've gotten the opportunity to do discipleship groups for guys and
Mm.
pornography is a big thing that comes up,
Yeah.
myself included.
Mm.
And I think I always challenge them because they're so focused on the symptom,
I gotta stop this.
right?
Stop, 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 stop.
I'm just like, okay, but why do you run to that? And that's
Hmm.
just the conversations we have. Like,
Hmm.
do you feel like you're hanging out enough with your friends? Like, do you feel like that you had enough sleep that night? Do you
Hmm.
feel like you're getting enough food? Like,
Hmm.
let's just go for the fundamental basics first before we start jumping to conclusions and blaming porn for a problem that's actually beneath the surface.
Hmm.
Would you say that's like,
I would totally agree. In my life personally, when I made major wins in that category, or actually when I stopped focusing less on the action and looking at that stuff and more on what was unsettled in
yeah,
me. Um, every human only has a limited amount of space in their brain.
mm,
And that's the things that take up space in a person's brain are stressors. So you have past stressors, future stressors, and current stressors. And a lot of and so anytime a stressor comes on you, at some point it's got to come out. But dudes in particular, when stress comes on them, they just kind of absorb it. So we all have a certain amount of past things that when we think about, it kind of stresses us out. But even if we're not actively thinking about it, this is every human being. Even if you're not actively thinking about it, it's taking up some space. So average adult walking around, male, female, is probably has about 15-20% of their brain energy is being used just to tamp down the stuff from their past. So that means they have like 80% to deal with what's in front of them today in a productive manner. So then they just start living their day. They're going to work. They're stressed. They have a coworker that's toxic. Stress, stress, stress. They don't know what to do about it. Stress, and then they get a flat tire, stress. They uh, have someone's rude to them, stress. All the current stressors. They have children. The children are misbehaving. Stress, stress, stress. It can start adding up, and then you got the future stress. Gosh, how long is it going to be like this? gosh, how am I going to get out of this situation? Like, are my kids going to be okay? My grandmother's sick. Gosh, I hope she's okay. Stress, 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 future. And then what happens is a person gets to where they have no tolerance for any more stressors. And at that point, once they get tipped over, and it could even be something small, like I could take a sip of this and spill this water on me. And if I was at 95%, that could be the last 5%. It's like, oh, I've done this. I'm doing this podcast. I'm embarrassed.
Yep.
And next thing you know, I'm totally off. At that point, that's when people become extremely reactive to whatever their tendencies are. So in that situation, we'll take the porn example. That person's stress, stress, stress. It's building up. They just need some relief. And it's like, huh, your brain's going to say, what's the quickest way to find this relief? Oh, phone. Just do. Oh, there, bam, got it. Instant relief while you're doing it. After a person's done that, though, instant guilt, shame, and then that can start another thing because now that's stress on them and they can start a cycle. And so once a person identifies other ways to find that relief or to meet it through other means that don't lead to negative outcomes, it actually lessens the desire to engage in behaviors that they don't really want. But they always do it because initially it meets the need.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what I realized. Well, Tyler, you're not discharging and releasing these emotions. You're just taking stuff on. Uh, when your wife's stressed, you're just absorbing it because that's what you're supposed to do as a husband. But you're just stacking this stuff on top of you, and you don't have an outlet. Yeah, you used to work out all the time, but then I started getting these migraines, 16 migraines a month, and it just depleted me physically. At that point, I would be more vulnerable to doing something like that. But it all clicked. Wait, there's other ways to find relief. You can find relief through having a connecting conversation with your wife, by talking about what you're feeling and thinking and having her join with you. And that gives way more release than me going to the gym for a couple hours, which does give you a release, but it doesn't to address the thoughts and feelings and the needs as deep.
I'm
So,
so glad you're saying
yeah.
this. This is
So it
so
was very
good.
helpful for me when I made that connection. That was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I was like, oh, wait, this is what drives that behavior that I do not want.
Right. I notice when I get any type of temptation, whatever I use, whether it's just like overeating dessert or just being super lonely or running a business and you're just not doing good that year, it's just
Mm,
like maybe you just need more support. So that way you don't
mm,
run to those old habits that you did break and you don't want
mm,
to go back to those habits. And I think it's really made me, even our conversation with you in your room, it's
mm.
really sparked making sure to check in with myself. Because I'm just
Yes.
like, CJ, when's the last time you actually talked to somebody? Just from our
Mm,
conversation, I'm just like,
mm,
oh, like, am I getting my needs? Because I'm telling
mhm,
people, making sure, but am
mm,
I?
mhm,
You know, it's
mhm.
because your business reflects you.
Yeah, the pressure.
Mm,
Anytime there's pressure, and especially for something that's valuable and important to you, a business owner like yourself, even you see this in ministry all the time. These pastors feel all this pressure to be all things to all people all the time. And that puts a lot of pressure on people who are under that unchecked or unexamined or processed pressure. People just double down on whatever their tendencies are. And for dudes in particular, the tendencies is just get the job done, and at the forget about what you're feeling or needing, just keep going. And that's where people become vulnerable to falling into stuff they don't want to fall into, or overly relying on something like Adderall.
yeah.
Oh, okay, just take more of this because I can keep functioning at this level. And it's usually for good intentions. Like a pastor doesn't want to fail his congregation because their souls are on the line. A business owner doesn't want to not provide excellent services because that's how he makes a living and helps people, or that's how she is able to help so and so navigate this difficult situation. So there's all this pressure because usually because people deeply care. And when you're seeing or talking to people that are struggling, it can amp it up because it's like, wow, uh, I might be the last person they talk to about this. So if there's pressure that's not being like tended to, people just jump to whatever their tendencies are and
Yeah.
they can get like fixed in it. And then they get burnt out or it kind of could fall apart for sometimes.
Yeah.
Or they get really snippy towards other people because they don't have any brain space. That doesn't give any space. That makes you very reactive.
Yeah. And what's great, and do you think that from your experience, when people are having habitual panic attacks, that they're just on the tipping edge? Or is this like, is that a completely different
I think
thing?
that's a factor in it. There's a whole bunch of stuff that is involved in it, but I think you could view it through that lens. A person is having a buildup of stress that's not getting relieved. And once they cross their line of their tolerance level, they have a panic attack. At which point, during the panic attack, your body is physically releasing some stuff. Then they're exhausted afterwards because it's been released. But if the thoughts and the needs and all that stuff's not getting fully addressed or tended to, then the next thing you know, they have another build up, another panic attack, and it just keeps going. So I do take a similar approach.
Okay.
Um, because anytime I think we said this earlier, something emotionally is impacting you, there always has to be a discharge of all that energy.
Huh. Yeah, we didn't say that.
And if it doesn't get discharged, it gets built up in your body and then it's got to come out. The quick side note on this, some people might not agree. I think this is very powerful. In the Gospels, right before Jesus dies, it says he lets out a loud yell. And right after he let out the loud yell, the earth shook, the veil was torn, people rose from the dead. I think the sky turned black. All these, when he discharged all that energy, it, I believe, had a direct impact on the world we live in. I just think that's very
It
powerful.
is.
And then the people who witnessed it said, surely this is the Son of God.
Mm,
Even in that discharge, it was like this, he's God.
yeah.
Um, but yes, there always has to be a discharge and release. And a panic attack could be viewed as a release, and you get the release, but you're not getting the full benefit of it if you're not tending to the needs and the feelings that are attached to that panic attack.
Yeah. How would you view a panic attack that is not through that lens? What would be another appropriate way to view that? Or is there one? Is it always just, hey, you're at your capacity?
Um, that's how I tend to view it. But there's things that could, let's say someone had a traumatic experience when they were a child.
Mm,
They're not actively thinking about it every minute of the day. But say the something pokes and it kind of hits that nerve of that past traumatic event, they could have an instant panic attack. Because in the framework I'm talking about with the brain space, it gets poked, instantly they go through the roof and they've exceeded their capacity. So then it just comes out. So,
yeah.
in regards to other ways to think about it, this is just mostly the way I think about it because I view it like, okay, and there could be other better ways, and I'm happy to be educated on that. I find it useful to view it like the way I said though, because to me, it doesn't give that panic attack as much power because it's like, yes, this is your body yelling and screaming at you that you need a release, that there's something in going on that's not getting fully resolved or healed or settled. And therefore your body's telling you like this, I need this out. The thing is you just don't know how to get it out. So the therapy that I like to do is helping people fully understand the feelings they're having, the thoughts they're having, the need that's going on, and then what they do. So in that example with the panic attack, again, I'm making this up because I
Right.
don't know who, but let's say they're starting to feel overwhelmed. And when they feel overwhelmed, they have a thought. This is getting to be too much. I can't handle this. This is out of control. At that point, they need something. They might need to feel safe and calm and a sense of peace and rest, but they're not. And it's just building. And then something happens. They have a panic attack. Or they do something to try to mitigate the panic attack. They might try to walk away from the situation. But then if they walk away from it, but then someone comes right back in their face, then it could result in a panic attack. So I view the a person's feelings and their needs is never ever the problem.
Huh.
Your feelings are just neutral things that you have, but it's the thoughts that you attach to it that can very much be bad or unhelpful. But you just feel sad. You feel uh overwhelmed. Like that's just what you feel. It gets attached and connected to a thought in the same way with what a person needs. If I need peace and I'm not feeling it, then I'm going to do something to try to feel a sense of peace or rest. I'm going to yell at you to get away from me so then I can feel like I'm safe again. Like we all do that. So what people do is they overly connect and fuse their thoughts and feelings. They think it's the same thing.
Hmm.
It'll be like, "Hey man, what was that like the other day when what was that like the other day when you did blank?" You're like, "Man, I just," well, I'll use a marriage example. "Oh, man, when you and your wife, God, that was kind of intense. What was going on when you and your wife got in a fight?" And the dude would be like, "I just feel like they don't care about me at all." Like, that's a thought. I feel like they don't care about me at all. That's a thought that has an emotion connected to it, like fear or just uncertainty or confusion. My wife doesn't care about me at all. Those are connected. But a person, we all do it, will think it's the same thing. And the same with what a person needs versus what they do. They might need relief and understanding and care and security and stability. And when they're not feeling it, then they do something. And when they do that thing, it temporarily might meet that need, but it long term, it doesn't fully resolve it. And that's where I think panic attacks can start to come into play. Say, hypothetically, a person has been doing that. They've been avoiding, they've been relying on other things to meet their need, but when they rely on that said thing, it doesn't actually fully alleviate or tend to the emotions or to their needs. It just kind of temporarily covers it up. At a certain point, if that person's tried to mitigate that so many ways and none of it's worked, then you could get a panic attack where it all comes out and it's totally overwhelming. Your body's beyond dysregulated. Your thoughts, emotions, body is all out of whack because it's just so dysregulated. And then they have the panic attack, exhausted. Oh, okay, I'll take this pill. I've nothing against pills, but I'll take it, whatever. But it doesn't totally get to the root.
Yeah.
Once a person starts tending to and those emotions and deeper needs, then those type of things start to just naturally reduce themselves. Again, people could totally disagree with me on that, but that's what I've seen work in my clinical practice for the last 6 or so years.
Yeah. Man, that's so interesting too. And I love that you had the difference between emotion and thoughts
Mm,
because that's what I see a lot too with clients at ID Fitness. They're just like, I feel bad for being mad. And I'm just like, in the
mm.
back of my head, I'm like, wait, why are you judging your emotion? Your emotions is just a report and it's
Yeah,
telling you how you feel. It's like the check engine, like on your
it's just
dashboard.
giving you some
It's just giving you
information. Yeah.
information. And then those thoughts, actually, that's where you can start to dive in. And so
Hmm.
that's where it's so interesting that you say that because a lot of people think it's the same thing.
Yes, it's totally normal, and that's what people will, I'm gonna do some gender stereotyping. So what happens is, women tend, generally speaking, to be more emotional with their language. They are able to communicate more clearly what they're feeling. Like, I'm sad, I'm overwhelmed, I'm just frustrated about blank and blank. And they tend to have more emotional language. Dudes struggle more with that emotional language. You're not necessarily going to hear a dude say like, "Oh man, I'm just so sad about blank and blank and blank." Like, you're just not really going to hear two dudes on the phone talking like that. But what dudes will say is they'll give you thoughts. They'll say, "Gosh, I don't know when I just need a break from work," or "Man, so and so's all over me today," or "Gosh, I came home and my wife and I we just it was like all I wanted to do I came home and all I wanted to do was to watch the game, but my wife said we needed to go out to go do something with the kids. Like all those thoughts are also have implied emotions to them. Frustrated, overwhelmed, stressed, like but what happens is people don't cue those in, and that's why husband and wife are in such a position to help each other. Sometimes, and I don't have anything against emotion wills because they're helpful because they give you the words. But sometimes people will say, "All right, CJ, how did that feel when this happened?" And the person will say, "Man, I feel like I just couldn't catch a break." And then the person said, "Well, that's not a feeling. Point to the word. Point to the feeling word." Like, I don't necessarily take that approach. If someone says, "Man, I just can't catch a break," I will give the feeling. Well, dude, I could see how that's frustrating because you're telling yourself you can't take a break. Like, man. And then the person will give me something back. If they're not frustrated, they'll say, "No, I wasn't really frustrated. I was just confused
Mm.
because I'm working really hard and I just don't know when I'm going to get a break." And then I would revalidate, "Well, dude, that actually makes sense because you are doing the best you can and there's no end in sight." Like, I could see how that's confusing because you don't really have clarity on when you're going to get a good break. And then we would just keep fleshing it out like that. And a husband and wife, because we all have different strengths and weaknesses and our languages can be different, can help each other in that way. But oftentimes in relationships, they miss that opportunity. They'll say, "I don't know if he feels anything."
Mm.
But sometimes what I'll do is I'll be like, "Okay, this is when I will use it. I'll show, I did this a couple years ago. I'll show a list of emotion words. Hey, buddy, when's the last time, just read off all these emotions you've ever felt before." It'd be like sad, frustrated, overwhelmed, joyful, lonely. Just say, "I felt all these." And then it's like, wow, behind you felt each one of those emotions before. Behind every one of those emotions is a memory. You have, based on how many you said, you have there are so many conversations just sitting on the table of stories of times you felt sad. And those are opportunities for both of y'all to talk about that. Because when you talk about things like that, that's what connects people. When you're just giving facts or whatever, it doesn't necessarily feel connecting. But if I was like, "Man, dude, I felt so sad when my dog died, and this and this and this happened, and gosh, I just really miss Joy." And if you're like, "Dude, man, I remember when we had our first dog and this happened and it really was sad."
Mm.
And I felt that too. We would be connected. We've identified, we felt the same emotion. We both have a story of a time we felt that, and it would then deepen our bond. And oftentimes couples unintentionally miss these opportunities to more deeply connect because they'll often unintentionally,
Yeah.
because they just don't catch it. It's hard
Mm.
to catch it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never been like a big fan of the emotion wheel thing. I'm with you on that. So I think it's pretty
And,
fascinating.
and I do think it has
Yeah.
utility. I think, though, if you're in a position to be with someone without interrupting the flow, because if it's like, "Hey, how did you feel? I feel like blank. I feel like no one likes me." And then if I say, "Well, no, 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 look at that. Tell me the feeling on it." I think that interrupts the conversation and the connection versus just rolling with it. Like, "Okay, I feel like no one likes me." Like, I, dude, that's like a kind of a scary thought to think no one likes you, but yet every day you're going to work, you're going to school, you're talking to people, but to have the thought no one likes you, like that, like it'd be hard to get out of bed. Like you just give something back because you're having like a dialogue. I think that's more ideal than interrupting it and being like, "Well, no, no, no. What word is it on there?" And I'm not saying that's the only way people use it, but
Right. But you could have a tendency to do that if you're not
to
careful.
rely on it.
Yeah. It's a good tool,
Mm,
but don't think it's
mm.
the one all be all.
Because the more important tool is the emotional connection. So in order to empathize with another person, you have to allow yourself to feel that emotion. So if you were to tell me, this and this happened, and I'm a total failure.
Mm.
If you were to send that to me and I wanted to validate and send something back to you in an empathetic and understanding way, I would have to temporarily let myself think, okay, Tyler, when's the time you felt like a failure? It's like, oh yeah, when this happened. And then I would need to access that emotion for myself. Oftentimes people will block themselves from feeling that emotion that might be needed to empathize, and they'll block it and say, I don't know why you're feeling like that. Like, or the Bible says this and this, you shouldn't think that. Or they'll just be like, I don't, okay, well, dude, let's go over here. Or they'll be like, that's silly. They'll invalidate. But you said, I felt like a failure. I'm like, gosh, okay, I felt like that before. Dude, that makes sense. Like when I heard you say that, like my stomach dropped because that's such an overwhelming thought to think you failed, that you failed in life. Like, or I could go to you like that. Or I could be like, man, I remember a time where I felt like that. And it was really hard to know the next thing to do.
Mm.
Like you could when you access it yourself, but then you send it back. And when you do that, it helps a person feel connected, understood, and seen. And it doesn't take the focus off of them. Because if I were to, you could go to yourself multiple ways. I could say, CJ says, man, I felt like a failure. And I could, dude, I felt like that too. 2 years ago, this and this and this happened. And man, I just had to just think, okay, there's nothing I can do about it. I just got to move on. I could go to you like that, or I could go to you and say, dude, like I felt that before and it was really overwhelming and I didn't really know what to do. Both examples, I'm briefly talking about myself, but one of them takes the focus off of what you shared, but the other one kind of just enhances and adds to it.
I love how you said that because how I distinguish that is people talking with you or at you.
That's the perfect way to distinguish it. And
That's what the first thought I had when you said that. I'm just like, you explained it. I didn't know how to explain it like you did. I just know how to put it in like super simple terms. But that example you gave, it helped me connect the dots just there.
mm.
I'm just like, that's it. It's because it takes it off of the person. It's no long dialogue. It's monologue.
My, oh, that's perfect. You're right. And people inherently know when that's happened. And it totally shuts down conversation. And people are doing that to people all the time, whether it's their marriage, coworkers, whatever, but it kills a conversation. And then it doesn't allow you to get that connection. And then you want to talk about stress, it adds stress because now in a subtle way, you feel kind of rejected.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, I don't want to feel like that anymore. So I'm not going to give more. Anytime someone expresses, again, it could be through a thought, or they could say, I feel like a failure. I'm an idiot. No one likes me. Or they could say, man, I'm just so sad. I'm overwhelmed. Uh, Anytime someone gives that to another person and puts that out in the world, they're actually giving a very valuable part of themselves. And when it gets caught, it helps them work through that thought. But when it gets blocked, then they feel worse because, like, golly, like that was uncomfortable. I'm not going to do that. And then they end up absorbing more stress. And then if they start stacking all those stressors, then it might lead to them doing something to cope that they might not ideal want to do. And that doesn't put it on anybody's responsibility to catch it every time. We're humans, we don't. Like it could actually be on them to revisit with you. Revisits go both ways.
100, I could not straight
Yeah.
because especially people who listen to the podcast who lean more. I know this word gets thrown out a lot. Lean more towards codependency, which is just people pleasing in general.
Mm,
It's just like they have a tendency to think that they need to reconnect
mhm.
every single time when they do the wrong. I'm just like,
Yeah.
that's a little scary to say. I'm just like, well,
It puts so much pressure.
man, a lot of pressure.
Mhm. Yeah, the revisit goes both ways, especially again if you're both in a relationship and you want the same thing for that relationship. It both people can help and have responsibility to do the revisit.
Yeah. And I think it's that's got me thinking about just like the dating aspect too,
Mm,
as I'm in that season. And it's really fascinating because there's some girls I get the opportunity to date that I'm the only one revisiting,
Mm,
whether I can see they're frustrated or they're mad or they're just being very distant and cold.
mm,
And then I've dated girls who I feel like that's reciprocated. Like,
mm.
hey, CJ, I noticed that. I was like, oh wait, they noticed me.
That's nice.
That's like, especially when I actually started
Yeah.
dating women who I was attracted to very narcissistic women. And so that was an ugly trait that I had.
Yeah.
But like once I started noticing my needs and actually dating healthy people and getting
Mm.
help for it, I'm just like, man, this is nice to be noticed.
Oh, dude, it's beyond nice. Beyond. To be it can when a question I'll ask in the therapy room sometime is um someone might say you might say that, hey, we had this argument and man, like it felt so nice that my girlfriend said, hey CJ, like, are you okay? I noticed you seem off. A question I'll ask is, hey man, what did that communicate to you
Mm.
when they caught that and didn't just catch it in their mind? They then also shared it with you. And that, because you want to add to the wins, because that communicates so much.
And what's interesting, you said that too. I don't know why this just sparked it. Obviously, we're always going down these rabbit holes, me and you. But I remember sitting in my truck, like a very vivid memory, and I'm driving, and the girl that I was getting an opportunity to take the date at the
Mm.
time just touched my shoulder
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and was like, "Hey, how's your shoulder doing? I know that you hurt it like 4 to 6 weeks ago, like because I love dirt bike racing."
Mm.
And I'm just like, "Wow, I'm about to cry right now." Like I just didn't. I was like, "This is so odd." Like people forget that I hurt my shoulder, and then
Mm.
she noticed it. I was like,
Mm.
"This is so odd." Like I didn't
Yeah.
know. And what's crazy is I
Mm.
didn't even know how to respond.
Mm. Mm-hmm. That in a way could also be overwhelming because it's can feel so foreign, even though it's great. It's like, how do I? You almost will dissociate. It's like I don't know how to respond, which is totally normal. Which is also why a revisit for something positive like that is super important.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that.
Because on the back end, you could still re-clarify.
Because how is your partner or the person you're dating or your friend supposed to know that they actually did something really good and very like so
Mhm.
valuable to you? They don't know that if you
They
don't
don't know.
communicate that. And that's what kind of go
Mhm.
back to me. It's just
Mhm.
like, yes, that could be foreign to me, but
Mm.
it's my responsibility to let these
Mhm.
people know who care about me. That meant a lot to me.
Exactly. Because unintentionally, she puts her arm on you. It overwhelms you in a good way, but it overwhelms you, and maybe you just go cold. She could interpret that a couple ways. People tend to interpret things in a negative way. Wow, he blocked off. He's not emotionally available. I'm not saying you're any of those
Right.
things. You were just having a normal response to something good, but also good overwhelm. Like, how do I even and then you lock up. Like that could be interpreted as like, oh, he's cut off emotionally. Um, that's not the reality, but that's why the revisit allows clarification of like, hey, in that moment, like I haven't really had people notice me. And when you did, like it honestly stunned me in a
Mm.
good way. But in that moment, I didn't even have the words to say that. Now I do. And that's what I wanted to communicate how cared and loved for I felt when you did that.
Yeah.
That is like more than gold.
And it gives your spouse or your friendships or your coworkers or your cousins or your family, your uncle,
Mm,
it gives them tangible things to be
mhm,
like, I know how to help this person now. I know how to
mhm,
comfort them. I know what's value to them. And I think that's just got me in my journey, a person who is more of a people pleaser. And
mm,
so we don't even give the chance for people to do that because ourselves, we don't even know what we want.
mm, mhm,
And to sit
mhm.
there and have those assumptions that, because I catch myself that, well, they should just know. No, they shouldn't.
How?
No. How? We're not mind readers. And that's what I've been using
Mm,
specifically in this dating season is
mm.
like, that's one of the pushbacks that I got from some of the women I got opportunity to
Yeah,
date was like,
yeah.
well, shouldn't you just know that? I'm like, no, every woman
Uh,
I've ever gotten to date were different and they value different things and different
mhm,
wording.
mhm.
And so, yeah, you got to communicate that.
Yeah. And that's what's beyond complex. Certain words can mean a totally different thing to another person. Uh, And that's why these things happen so quickly. I could tell you, dude, I had fun today. You could interpret that a million different ways, none of which could be the way I interpret what it meant that I had fun. I could mean like my kids and I made pancakes this morning and just really enjoyed a special moment together. That was like really fun for me. You could think I'm talking about like going to a bar or going to play disc golf or going to like, but if we don't iron that out, even on something good, we could unintentionally drift. Like I could send my wife a message, say I'm at work and I have a cancellation, so I have a longer lunch. If I'm in a rush though, I could send a message and just say lunch question mark. And she just receives lunch question mark. At which point she can interpret that however she wants. So she might just be, oh, he's busy. I'm just gonna I'll so she just says, no, can't make it. And then I get no, can't make it. I could then interpret that, oh, she doesn't want to spend time with me
Mm.
and be a little butthurt. And then when I get home that night, I could be a little passive aggressive because she didn't want to spend time with me and I was trying to make time for her. But all I said was lunch question mark. If I communicate, hey, hey, I know it's going to be a crazy weekend. I have some free time. I love for us to get some intentional time, just you and me, like if you're free, because I miss you.
Mm.
That communicates way more than lunch question mark. And then even if she can't, she'll be able to say, "Oh my word, like I really want to. I got this and this and this, but man, just hearing you say that made me feel like thought of and cared
Yeah.
for." And that and then I get so then she feels relief because wow, he is thinking about me. He does want quality time. She then says, "I can't make it. But man, like you made me feel so loved just sending that." I then feel good because I'm like, wow, you've taken care of your wife. You've thought of her. And then I'm no longer butthurt that we didn't get to go to the lunch because we got a win.
Mm.
But if it was just lunch question mark, I could misinterpret that totally. And so could she. And then it could end up in a fight. Maybe not even later that day. That if we don't clear that out, 2 weeks from now, we're in a fight. And you just said you couldn't have lunch with me. And you said you wanted me to make you a priority. And I did that. And you just said you couldn't make it. And she could be like, you just said lunch question mark. Like, how am I supposed to know that? It's like, oh, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
kind of like making the implicit explicit.
I
Um,
like that.
yeah, that's very important because when you do that, it helps communicate the heart behind what you're actually trying to do. And that's why, even on a revisit with what you said with the hand, it allows you to explicitly communicate, like in words, that what that actually meant. And then you get to celebrate that as I don't know if y'all are still together, but as y'all are kind of progressing in that
Right.
relationship, whether y'all stay together or not, it's still a good practice
Eh,
for whoever you do end up with.
Right. And I always tell when I'm in the dating world, whether it's casually or exclusively, I'm just like, okay, always leave your date better than you found it.
Mm,
And that is revisiting the positive and the negatives. So
mhm,
that way you guys can prepare for the future spouse the Lord has for you. I'm
exactly.
like, and that's why I always kind of communicate with my dates, like when they're not used to this revisiting thing.
Mm.
And I like that. I like that how it makes it come across a little more easier instead of like,
Yeah.
hey, I need to talk to you. Like, hey, I just want to revisit this to make sure we're on the same page. Just makes it a lot easier.
Mhm, mhm,
But I've noticed that the more you have that and the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And this is just a normal conversation instead of this
mhm.
pressure like, this is conflict. This
Oh,
is going to be a
is
super
this gonna be
challenge.
the end of
I
it?
can't
Da, da,
believe
da.
this. But it's like the more you do it, the more
Mhm,
complicated, the more better words choices that you use.
mhm.
It just becomes an everyday part of your life.
Oh, it just becomes more
Hmm.
natural. When Jamie and I were dating, first she said no, and then I think I might no, I don't know. When all that was going on, and then we went on a date, and then Jamie would have the tendency to be very anxious because of things that happened in her life. So when she would get the anxiety would start to take over and it wasn't getting sorted out, we would have a revisit and talk about it. And as we talked about it, anxiety reduced. It got clear. And she said one of the things that she appreciated most about the way I pursued her in our relationship was I was always clear with where I saw the relationship going, what I was thinking about, and what I was struggling with. She goes, "You didn't leave much room for my brain to fill in the gaps." Because we talked about stuff, it allowed me to actually notice what I was really thinking and feeling without my anxiety hijacking it.
It's so interesting you say that. So I got the opportunity to date um just a couple dates,
Mm,
and she was so used to this pressure of their dates. Like, I need to know now, kind of like the same
mm.
terminology. And I'm just like, I'm
Uh,
naturally, I would like to take credit of that. That's just how I'm like, take your time. Like, 'cause I don't like to be rushed. So I just
yeah.
like, I empathize. I'm like, yeah, take your time. I hate that feeling, cause I can feel that.
Yeah.
And it gave her time to think. She's like, I never
Mhm.
had so much peace as I was thinking, but I also knew that I was going to go on another date with you, but I knew it was completely fine because there's no pressure.
No pressure. When the pressure gets removed, it allows people to live more in that kind of longing position versus like the protected, what is it? I got to know. Because every human is like a threat mitigation system. And so when a person feels a threat, they have anxiety. And once you eliminate the threats, it doesn't leave as much room for anxious type thinking. And in conversations like that, it kind of alleviates the pressure, lets people just breathe and just like, huh, okay, he said this. He's shown that he keeps his word. I can trust that. And again, whether you and that girl end up getting married or whatever, that is a positive for both
Yep.
people because it communicates and it tunes people in of like, okay, it might not have clicked long term for us, but now I know what this feels like to grow in a relationship with someone. And that's stuff like I want more of
Hmm.
with whoever it ends up being. So that's like a beyond net positive, whether relationship ends or not, that y'all experience that. I love stuff like
Mm.
that because it shows that people are. I like to. Um, it shows to me that you're treating this process of dating with like high value, where you're not just trying to take care of yourself, but you're trying to take care and do what's for the ultimate good of this other person as well.
Yeah.
And that's very good to do because oftentimes people they don't really check themselves and they go too deep in relationships because they're being motivated by pressure or fear. I'm getting old. I need to meet somebody. I don't want to be single forever. I don't, maybe if I do this, I'll get my parents off my back, whatever it is. And people make terrible decisions in that state. In a disrupted state like that, people are the worst problem
Mm.
solvers and over they'll kind of jump forward and go too fast. There's this relationship model. What's the guy's name? I don't remember his name. The book's called How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk. But he has this relationship attachment model. It's got a couple, it's got like a, it's got it says know, trust, rely, commit, touch. And they're all five in a line with no being first. And it said the more you know somebody, the more that goes up, the more you can trust them. And the more that goes up, the more you can trust them, the more you can rely on them. The more you can rely on them, the more you can commit to them. And then once those are up there, that's when it's safest to introduce touch. But we in the Western cultural world introduce touch super fast and it hijacks your ability in that process. But when you're focusing on knowing and letting that grow, and then trust and let that kind of grow, and then relying and then committing, it puts you in a way firmer headspace to approach a relationship where you're not going to cause harm.
That's right.
It might hurt if the breakup or the relationship ends, but it's not going to harm the person or you.
Yeah. It's
But if you mix up touch and you go too much in
too
too
close.
fast, it can cause harm.
Yes. And I think that's too is like I've been in scenarios where I'm attracted to the girl,
Mm.
but it's a slow attraction build because I'm
Mm.
getting to know them. They're becoming more attractive because attraction is just not physical beauty. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
goes beyond that. I mean, obviously you need to be attracted to them. I'm not saying you
Yeah.
shouldn't be attracted to them,
Yeah.
but get the hint. And there's some woman where I'm super attracted to, but I don't know. And
Yeah.
those have very two different temptations. And I didn't realize that until this year. Like, I'm
Mm.
just like, whoa, like the more I am physically attracted to the person, the slower I actually have to go and the better
Mm.
positions and environments I need to be in.
I think that's very wise and spot on because, like you said, people, when it's like um, instant attraction, then it can hijack because instantly speeds you up and it can lead you to start making assumptions of like, oh, then we're probably going to be in sync with blank, 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 and blank. And then if you let that kind of overrun you, then you could unintentionally miss a couple of things like, wait, we don't even like really enjoy talking. Um, and yeah, I think that's a good differentiation that you made
Yeah.
with Jamie. I think God kind of had blinders on. So we were in Italy. It was five single girls, two single dudes, and some married couples. And I I didn't even really notice Jamie, and she didn't notice me. She didn't know that I had a beard. It wasn't this gray at that time. It was actually it was black. Now it's like gray. My daughter's like, Dad, why is your beard so white? You're only 40. I'm like, I don't, it just is. But we, throughout the year, it was like we didn't even see each other. And that's one of the reasons she was so shocked when I said I liked her. Cause she was like, all you've seen me in this year's in pajamas and heard me burping and like I've done nothing to try and impress you. I was like, man. So she was shocked that she didn't have to do anything for me to like her. And then there were some funny things that happened. There was a one of my buddies, I called him from Italy and he had seen some pictures of our team. He was like, "Hey, that Jamie girl's really cute. You should try to talk to her." I said, "Oh, no, no, I'm not interested at all, but I could try to hook y'all up." And I got off the phone and I said, "Man, my buddy just said they thought I should try to chat with Jamie." This was like 2 months in. But one of the other team members, she goes, "Huh, I could see that." I was
Yeah.
like, and I blanked it. But yeah, you're right. I think the physical attraction can speed you up, but it's definitely important.
Yes. I think that's so true. Like, cause that's been too, is like one of my friends, he even said that. It was like, what do I do when I'm so overwhelmed by attractionish and I'm still trying to get to know her and we have no ties? In other words, I just met her. She just met me. We don't know each other's friends.
Mm.
We literally have nobody in sequence with each other.
Mm.
And I was just like, public place, public place, public place.
Protect.
Like, 'cause
That's where protection is very important to safeguard that so your brain doesn't get hijacked. And I think you're onto something. That doesn't mean in the relationship, obviously, but it means that because what sustains a relationship is the emotional connection. I am probably 55 or 60, maybe 70 pounds heavier than I was when Jamie and I met. And I'm in the process of getting back healthy. The migraines really hijacked me. It just depleted me so much.
Mm,
Um, and I've been more insecure about how I look because Jamie has stayed very fit and is in great shape. I'm like, oh, she doesn't find me attractive at all. And this was nice to hear, but she goes, Tyler, like, I, when I see you, I don't even, that doesn't, not what registered. I feel so emotionally close and safe and so known and understood and like such a deep appreciation for the man that you are. Like, that's not really what I'm even notice. I was like, nice to hear, but also I want to be better shape.
that's right.
But but that's the stuff that sustains you because a person's physical appearance goes away. Like, but the emotional connection is beyond sustainable. And that's what, in my mind, when this is across the board, when someone's in a protected state, they unintentionally, because they might be in a survival state it's less attractive. When someone's in an open, just a secure, longing state, it is makes anybody, it's just way more attractive because it's like it's a beautiful.
Yep.
But someone can be objectively attractive, but like cold and shut down and off. And it doesn't matter how physically attractive they are because it's not like beautiful.
Been there.
Yeah. And it doesn't,
Their attraction actually gets worse because your emotion keeps getting distant.
it's like,
I'm like, I remember there's this one high school girl that I was like, is just drop dead gorgeous, right? I'm just like,
mm.
finally get an opportunity to talk to her my senior year. And I talked to her. I'm just like, this is what I waited for. Like, cause there's just no emotional connection at all whatsoever. And I was just like, that's when it dawned on me. I was like, it's a lot more goes into
A
beauty.
lot more. And that's another thing is as people grow, this is, I guess, I don't know if we're going down another little path, but that's where that physical can be deceptive. People want, deep down, they long for a deep, deep emotional, secure attachment connection. That's what everybody wants. Um, and then when people don't know how to get it, then they just fall for what they can see. So it's like, oh, well, I need to feel secure. I didn't grow up feeling secure. That person has a really nice car. They look like they have it all together. If I get that, then I can be secure. They're a really beautiful, attractive person. If I get that, that'll meet that need. They just jump to like once or two steps ahead of them. Like get a nice house, therefore I'm stable, secure. But unintentionally, it doesn't really hit the deep root.
Mm-mm.
And so that's where people can end up playing out their life and then they end up feeling like empty.
Yep.
But if they're going for that deep, secure, I want this lifelong commitment where we're going to iron this stuff out. Like, yeah, you can have the physical stuff as well, which is great. My wife and I call the intimacy part like, the cherry on top of your sundae. We want to make sure the 95% of all the other stuff is awesome. And man, that cherry just really adds to it. And we want it. But if you reverse that part doesn't sustain a relationship. In fact, in the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, he's in a concentration camp and he makes this really unique observation. He noticed that while they were all deprived of all the physical stuff, they didn't know what was going to happen to them. He said he realized that in those situations there no one talked or was interested in sex at all they cared about was God and other people.
Mm,
And so at the end of the day, that wasn't one of their base needs. When everything was stripped away, that's what they talked about: God and others. Basically, God, politics, what's going on in the world.
yeah.
They didn't. The desire for sex, they didn't have to have it.
Yeah. And I don't know why this in a weird way made me go back down this rabbit hole. But I had a friend who was just like, hey, like, I'm just really attracted to this girl, blah, blah, blah. And we didn't have sex or anything. I was
Mm,
like, okay. And he was like, but it's like, we just got too close physically.
mm,
I'm just like, I should just cut it off. Done. Right. I'm like, not
mhm,
necessarily. I was like, he's like, well, I've already heard her, he hasn't revisited. I'm like, so
mm.
just talk to her about it. I mean, I'm sure she probably feels bad too,
Yeah,
and then he talks to her about it. And then they just develop a game plan
yeah,
to protect themselves to move forward. So I always try to encourage people, like, and I want to make sure this comes off clear in the podcast too, like with marriages, with dating, with coworkers, like you're going to have to revisit
yeah.
and you're going to make mistakes along the way. You're probably going to have to apologize a lot to each other and
Mhm.
forgive each other and move forward. And that's just part of the journey.
Yes, it's just part of being an adult and being a adult male, man or woman. It's just having a assertive conversation. But again, it's how you do it.
Mm,
Um, there was this lady when I was transferring I worked at a hospice in New Orleans and then a community-based counseling center in Monroe where I would go to people's homes. And then I was in the process of coming to Oxford, and that was kind of interesting story how that happened. But I had to deal with the licensing board here, and the lady would be kind of really short with me every time I called, and it started to irritate me. I'm like, why is she mad at me? It's like, so I said, well, Tyler, I'm going to revisit that. So I called, next time I called her, she started being short with me. And I said, hey, have I done something to offend you? And she goes, no, why would you say that? I said, well, I'm noticing that, it comes across like you're being really short with me or like you're frustrated about me calling. She goes, oh, she goes, no, I'm not frustrated about that at all. She goes, I'm just the only person that works here and I have 3 phone lines and I get a couple hundred emails a day and I'm just stressed and I've got some stuff going on with my mom, but no, I'm not upset with you at all. I said, oh, thanks for clarifying that. I just wasn't sure. And then from that point on, every time we spoke on the phone, best
And
conversations.
what's interesting too about the conversation, because I always think about the flip side,
Mm.
is that if you're that stressed out at work and you have that many phones ringing, then that could potentially, not all cases, potentially could be like you're doing too much. And if you can't provide a service like that until somebody
Mm.
says that, like I'm glad that she connected with you,
Yeah.
but it's just like
Yeah.
if she's doing that to you, she's doing that with other people
Mm.
too.
And I will say in her defense, uh, she was put in an impossible position
Mm,
because the way the funding was, it was only allowed for one employee. So she was doing the work of 3 or 4 people. In the licensing board in Louisiana, they were totally staffed up.
wow.
I actually went to one of the board meetings and I said, hey, I would like to advocate that there's more funding allotted so she can have an assistant because she was really in a difficult spot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got me curious of why she didn't advocate that either. At the same time,
She might
she could
have,
have.
I'm not
Yeah. We
sure,
don't know.
but yeah, I don't know. But again, people kind of have their tendencies, and if someone's tends to be more of a people pleaser, they'll just absorb, and they won't stop and say, "Hey, I'm getting overwhelmed," because they'll feel like to go back to that Paul David Tripp quote
Hmm.
for the good. They'll they might believe a subtle lie that a good person says yes. You want to be a good person's helpful, and they're saying they need help on this. So you need to be a good person, and you say
Yeah.
yes. So they'll say, yes, I can do it. Sure. Okay. I'll take care of it. I'll come in on Saturday, whatever. It's like, and they say yes, 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 because in a subtle way, they're trying to protect their image of themselves of being a good person. And in their brain, a good person says
Yes.
yes, but that is not actually for their ultimate good or for other people's ultimate good.
Yeah. And it gives, like, as a
I'm
business.
not saying that
No, no,
she
no. Yeah.
was
It's
doing
just a
that,
good
but just in
example. Yeah.
general, people who tend to say yes have a subtle view of like, oh, a good person would say
Yeah. Cause me
yes.
and Ben, my coworker too, is like, I always tell him too, it's like, if you don't communicate that you're stressed and you have too much work and you need help and you haven't asked for help, I get a
Mm,
false impression
mhm.
that you can handle it and we don't need help.
Yeah,
And so then I start putting these
more on it.
on them and then I
Or
have
just,
more systems in place. And then all of a sudden I'm just like, dude, what's the deal?
why
It's like,
haven't
I've been
you?
stressed out for the last 6 months, you know? And so it's like, I've just told him, I was like, make sure you communicate with us so that way we can
Mm,
pivot earlier so we don't run
mhm.
into those problems.
And this goes to again, I'm not saying this being, this goes to that thing you talked about in my little model, judging emotions, feeling overwhelmed, bad, feeling happy, good. It's okay to share when I feel great and this is awesome. But man, if I'm feeling stressed or like I'm overwhelmed, I can't. That's bad.
Yeah.
So I don't. So then, if people have a subtle view that their emotions are good or bad, when someone feels a quote unquote bad emotion, they're not now going to go tell someone else that they're feeling bad because, especially if they don't want to feel like they're disappointing somebody. So then, if I believe me feeling overwhelmed was bad, I'm not going to tell you, CJ, this and this and this is just too much for me. Cause then I'd be like, ooh, he could judge me or think less of me or think I'm a disappointment. And I don't want to be disappointment. I want him to be confident in me. So therefore I just won't say anything,
Right.
but so stuff it.
Yep.
And then 2 months later, it's like, they're like having a panic
Yep.
attack. You're like, what's going on, dude? And it's like, gosh, too much. Like,
Yep.
man, well, that's what a subtle way where people will do that. They'll judge their own emotions. And when you do that, you don't give a way to release
Mm-mm.
it. And if you don't release it, at that point, you're vulnerable to it coming out because it's going to come out, but it could come out in a way that you don't
Want it
want.
to. It's like you
Yeah.
have the conscious choice to say how you feel
Yeah. Now
now, or it's going to come out eventually
it's
like
come
a
out.
bike pump and just
Yeah.
explodes.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. I used to mountain bike a lot, and that's beyond frustrating when that happens. I view it like you want to treat your emotions like your digestive system. You want to have regular releases. You don't want to be all constipated where it's all stuffed in there, and you don't want it to just come out and fall diarrhea all over the place. Because when you get all constipated, it's all stuffed up in there, and it's eventually going to come out,
Yep.
or people who are just like, "Blah." At that point, it's hard to hear what's really going
Yep.
on for the person. You want regular releases because it's, again, gonna come out somehow.
Yep.
Whether you choose for it to in a way where you can do it in like a regulated, composed way, or a week, a year, whatever down the road, and it's gonna come out, but you might not. You might be out of control at that point.
Yeah.
And at that point, you do look weak and uh, just totally out of control because it's so much is stacked up in there.
Yeah. I for some reason now I want to jump to EMDR. Is that how you say it?
Yes, eye movement desensitization reprocessing.
Okay, and that's something
Mhm.
that you have experience with.
Yeah,
You know how to work
something
with
I'm
it.
trained
So,
in.
like people talk about this all the time. I know a
Mm.
little bit about it,
Yeah.
but do a EMDR training for dummies.
Well, so first of all, trauma can block a person from expressing their emotions. So say I the way in my life I grew up and I was constantly a disappointment or my parents were always on me and I felt like I was failing left and right. So that could be considered a traumatic event. What happened in my childhood left me thinking or believing that I'm a failure. So therefore, in my current life, I'm going to do everything possible to prevent ever having to think or feel that again. So, a way I might do that is by people pleasing and just taking care of everybody's stuff and being in total control. So, therefore, no one thinks I'm a failure and I don't have to think I'm a failure. So, if that happens to somebody, then at that point, they're totally blocked from expressing their emotions because they've already set rules in place of, yeah, I'm not going to allow myself to do that because if I do that, people could think I'm weak and I'm a failure. So therefore, I'm blocked. EMDR, eye movement sensitization or processing, I do not love the name. It's hard for me to say, but it's basically a model to help people process through traumatic events. So something happens in somebody's life, and from that event, it leaves them stuck with thoughts or beliefs about themselves like I'm a failure or I'm worthless. And so that event occurred in the past. If it doesn't get fully repaired, then that person is now stuck. This event happened and I'm a total failure. And when that happens, it creates a filter in a way in which a person views the world. If that happened to me when I was something happened to me when I was 10 and I believed I'm a failure, now almost every interaction I have going forward, I'm going to filter through that lens, either trying to avoid it or it's either going to be confirming it. And so when someone experiences an overwhelming or traumatic event, it gets stuck in someone's thoughts, like I'm a failure. It also gets stuck in their emotions. They feel like overwhelmed, kind of jacked up, distressed, sad, confused, all types of emotions. And it also gets absorbed in their physical body. So it's like when you think about feeling like a failure, a person's chest might get tight or their stomach drops or something physically happens in their body, their blood pressure goes up. Something happens to all three of those.
Hmm.
And so what EMD and then that happened and then they just start living their life and again they stack more on top, more blocks or more ways to prevent it or more evidence to say yeah, you really are a failure. And so the way EMDR works is it helps a person process through that event that left them stuck with that negative belief. And the way you do it, it's through this thing called bilateral stimulation. It's basically when you activate somebody across the middle of their body. So sometimes it's done through eye movement, where like you're in REM sleep cycle where your eyes are darting back and forth, or you can do it through these pulse things people will have, pulse ox or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
I do it through tapping on a person's knees, like tap, tap, tap. And so you just take the overwhelming or traumatic event, and then you am I going into too much
This is
details? This
great.
is a so you just say, okay, this event occurred. It left you stuck with this thought. And now in your current life, the way traumatic stuff works is this event occurred. It never got fully healed or resolved. Therefore, I'm now 30 years old and I'm walking around and maybe I make a mistake at work. And then bam, I'm a failure. That same feeling and thought of feeling overwhelmed, thought of failure, needing to feel secure, and I'm not because I made a mistake gets activated. The problem is it's if it's linked to the past. So if that just happened in my normal everyday life and I didn't have some traumatic event, I'm like, okay, people make mistakes, let's move on. That's it. But if I have something from my earlier life that really traumatized or overwhelmed me, and now I'm thinking and feeling the same stuff I did when I was 10 years old, there's a direct line to that well of emotions that never got fully dealt with or resolved. So now it feels like a way bigger thing than, oh, you just made a small mistake. It feels like, oh my God, I'm a total failure. This is the worst thing ever because it's linked to it.
Yeah.
So what EMDR does is it helps sever that link. When a person goes back and processes through overwhelming or traumatic memory, it helps them kind of let it go. And so what happens is they'll say your brain will keep track of time. Like in that example, my brain will know, oh, Tyler, you just made a small mistake. That's kind of stupid to get upset about it. And this isn't the same as what happened to you when you were a kid. Your brain can know that, but your emotions and your physical body, they don't really keep time. So that they don't know that that was 20 years ago
Right.
or 30. It doesn't matter. It feels like it's right now. And so EMDR helps a person go back and then fully resolve what's kind of left. So in life, when people go through difficulties and disruptions, trauma, overwhelm, whatever you want to call it, something that never fully got repaired, what happens is in order to survive, you have to let go of valuable parts of yourselves, the parts of yourself that knows that you do have worth and value, you are loved, that you can be human and make a mistake, but that doesn't mean that you're doomed. Like the valuable longing parts of a person when they've been traumatized and it doesn't get repaired, that's the stuff that gets left behind. That's why I believe people who have PTSD will have recurring nightmares and stuff. It's because I think your body and your mind and your emotions want to heal so bad. They're like, we got to get this out. We got to get this out. But we're revisiting it, but not in a way that actually allows us to fully release it and heal from it. And so the EMDR, you take a person and you identify this is the event, this is what you believed about yourself. What would you prefer to believe about yourself? And then you ask a couple other questions, and then you just sit with the person as you do the bilateral stimulation, the tapping or the eye, or you watch a light bar. And then there's several other things that go on, and you just provide a safe place for them to process through the memory in a way so you'll ask a scaling question like, when you think about this event where you told yourself you're a failure on a scale from 0 to 10, now how much does it bother you? 10 being the most. And say they say like it's like an 8. You'll go through the EMDR protocol, and as you're doing it, there'll be indicators of whether the person's processing through the memory or not. And what's incredible about it is I'll say, okay, you're telling yourself you're a failure, you're feeling scared and overwhelmed, and you notice that your hands are clammy, and then just notice that, and you'll process through it. And after a person's processed through the memory, you keep bringing up the thing that bothered them. So then I'd say, okay, when you think about this happening and you're telling yourself you're a failure, what do you notice now? It's like, well, I noticed that, I just made a human mistake and that happens. And though that event was distressing, like that doesn't have to define me. I just the other day, someone told me that they couldn't do stuff without me. Like, and that made me feel really worthwhile. Like they'll start identifying more positives. But after a person's fully processed through a memory, I'll go back to their body. I'll say, okay, when you notice that event, what do you notice physically in your body now? They'll be like, I just feel like sturdy or calm, like my chest feels light.
Mm.
But not an hour ago when I said the exact same things, clammy, stressed, but it got released, their emotions, their physical body, and then in their thoughts. When a person's thoughts, physical body, and emotions are synced up, they're in alignment, that's when you know you're in a really good spot. So, what happens is, let's say the person who hasn't really dealt with it, they might initially think, I'm an idiot, I'm a failure, and their body is all tight, and then emotionally they feel really overwhelmed, and that syncs up. But then they'll say, no, you're stupid to think that. Like, you're not. Like, that happened in the past. The past is in the past. Just let it go. They'll say that what is the truth, but when they say that, their body's still jacked up and their emotions are still all over the place. So at that point, they're out of alignment. And that point, just giving the thoughts over and over to the person, it doesn't help because it doesn't touch all the parts. So when you process through something and then the person says, man, I know that happened. It was distressing, but I also know my worth and value is more than just what that person did to me. I'm worth more than that. And then when they say that, and then they say their body feels calm and it feels like their chest feels like a weight's lifted. And then emotionally they feel like secure and safe. When they say, that doesn't, I'm worth more than that. And it lines up across those three things, the person's in a great spot.
Yeah. Now,
Does that make sense?
yeah, it makes sense. It's got me thinking a little bit as you were saying that. I've noticed like when I'm in the weight room
Mm.
and a client is lifting weights and I am only in there, they're the ones only in there and they're moving. They're working out, not at a very high intensity. They're just lifting weights, plenty of rest. They're very comfortable with me. They know me. They've been over here, sometimes it takes about 3-4 months before they start like
Yeah.
really feeling it. I almost feel like that's kind of what I do in a different way. Do you think I'm off with that? Do you think EMDR that's just totally different?
What do you mean do in a different way?
I think that's a form of EMDR.
EMDR is like a specific like model.
So it's like a specific system that you use.
It's like a very like defined. I know I kind of spoke real broad, but there's like a protocol and it's very specific, very targeted. Now people do get bilateral stimulation all the time. Like when you're going for a walk or a run
Okay.
or riding a horse, you're
So I
getting
was wondering why people feel so. That's the reason why I'm asking is because I
yeah,
feel like they're getting comfortable.
you're getting bilateral stimulation all the time just doing that. Like I could tap myself like this right now and I'm getting bilateral stimulation. That's why a lot of times people seem like will say they have better thoughts when they're walking or riding a horse or going for a run. I just need to go for a run because you get the physical release, but you're also getting the bilateral stimulation. But EMDR is like a super focus.
Got it.
And it's like a model that I think it was like a 2-week training with supervision that like is very like in depth about specifically for someone processing through something traumatic. That's not saying there's not other
Right.
ways, but it's like something you have to get like a specific
Yeah.
training in to be able to administer it.
Yeah. And that's good because that's to be able to differentiate for people who have no idea about EMDR and what it takes. So I'm glad you said
Yes.
that.
And it can be confusing because, like, okay, I'll just do this and I'll give myself EMDR. That's not, that's bilateral stimulation, but it's not necessarily EMDR.
Yeah. Now, have you ever heard of anything that's different bilateral stimulation that has worked, or is that like the only one you really kind of,
That's just the approach, the model that I
yeah,
use. So I don't spend a lot of time focusing
other
on
models?
others. There's the brain spotting, which is, I don't know a ton about it, but it seems beyond interesting. And there's other people use like a trauma egg. Like there's all types of ways people can get that release. I just find the EMDR to be super effective and helpful, and it allows for someone uh to process through a memory where it relieves a ton of pressure.
Mm,
So when I'm doing the EMDR with somebody, there's total freedom to just notice. So say, um, let's take the example of I'm a failure, and I would say, okay, Tyler, you're telling yourself a failure, and when you think about it, you're stressed and blank. Just notice that, and I would do the bilateral stuff, and then I would say, okay, what was the last thing you noticed? And then me, Tyler, and the example would be like, I noticed, I'm remembering this, this, and that. Or I could say, man, my legs feel like numb. Or I could say, like, I could notice that I'm feeling really sad. I could give you a thought, feeling, or something in my body. And then I would say, okay, notice that. And then there's again a couple other things that get weaved in there, but it's like a really focused model that's got like a protocol that you'll follow.
yeah. It's
Um,
got me thinking about like I'm such a creator and artist,
mm.
at heart. And so it's got me thinking like I wonder if anybody or if they haven't, don't steal my idea. Me and Tyler made it up first. But like a bilateral stimulation through exercise for therapy.
I think that could totally go together because anything that's like what I like about the EMDR is you have a stated goal.
Mm,
I have this thought, I don't want it. I would prefer to believe blank that I'm worth more than the way that person treated me. So you already identify the goal, and then once that's identified, the EMDR is assisting a person with breaking through anything that might be blocking them, or something that's still in that memory from really believing what they know is the actual truth.
yeah.
And so I don't see why there couldn't be some way to merge or integrate that type of stuff. People integrate things
Right.
all the time. Like I've been integrating the EMDR with the emotionally focused
Yep.
therapy, and there'll be times where I'm doing EMDR sessions, but the spouse is in the room. And
Mm.
what I've noticed about that is what will happen in an EMDR session can be extremely powerful, uh, beyond powerful. It is crazy, and I count it a tremendous blessing to literally watch somebody heal from something that was just beyond horrendous, and to get to experience that with somebody is hard to describe. But so what can happen is someone can have that moment individually, and then they go home and their spouse is like, "Hey, how was therapy today?" Like, "Oh, it was good." He like tapped on my knees, and man, I think it really helped. Well, what helped about it? I don't know. I just feel better. Like, which is cool, but man, when that husband or wife is in the room with the person and they both know they want the best for themselves and their marriage, and they get to experience the healing and see that their spouse experience that, and then at the end they're just embracing each other and they're more bonded and more connected. It is beyond incredible, because at that point you don't have to say, oh, this happened, that was kind of cool, because we all experienced it. And it helps just enhance and increase the stuff without having to be like, okay, I got to remember to tell them this later today after I go back to work and I get yelled at by my boss, but make sure I tell them this. Like, or the kids, like, how am I going to remember we already just did it.
Yeah.
We made the most of that hour all together. So I've kind of been integrating those
That
together.
is so
It's
fascinating.
been really neat.
Yeah. And I like that because in the right setting, when you do that with a married couple, it's they get to experience what you just witnessed.
Mm-hmm.
And like what you said is like the beautiful thing of watching somebody get released.
Mm.
Like now you have another person, and then you guys can all say like that was incredible.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And sharing that with more people. I always think about as a dirt bike race. This might be a silly analogy, but I remember I won in Alabama, but nobody was there that I knew. And don't be wrong, it was fun, and I had a
Yeah.
blast racing.
Mm-hmm.
And then one time when I didn't even win, but I got top 5 or my
Mhm.
top first 15 at a big race.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and people were there like, yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
I'm just like, that's what it feels like.
It's more satisfying. I totally agree with you because we're designed to be in connection with people. And that's why it's like my preference is couples therapy or family therapy because that's who most of our life is lived with. Very much enjoy individual therapy, but if there's a situation where both people can come, that's what I love because you can experience all that there. Versus like, okay, da da da. Well, it might be good. What could be ways to go home and revisit this with your wife? But because people have so many blocks to doing that, it's for some people it can feel impossible. Whether it's because of past trauma, which could also be attachment type wounds or injuries from their past, uh, life circumstances and pressures they feel right now, roles they have about uh, uh, genders rules they have about emotions. All those things can totally block a person's ability to like productively and effectively revisit a conversation. But if we're all together, then my job is to help identify and flesh through those blocks so then they get the win as a couple. And then when they get the win as a couple, they're more likely to just keep reproducing that without me. Because I'm just a temporary part of the people I see's life. I love it. It's so interesting because in my job, uh talk about people can either be in a protected state or a longing state. In the therapy room, I actually get to see the best parts of people. People will share devastating, horrific things that they experienced, but I also get to see the best parts of people because in that safe place, they can more freely express their longings. And I view my job as helping them get rid of those blocks so then they can then go more freely live like that in their day to day life. And so it's really enjoyable.
Mm.
But yeah, I think what you said about the road bike makes total sense because again, this is what always makes me cringe when I'm watching football. Every time I see someone jump up to give a high five, but there's nobody there, like I literally like, oh, I hate that for that guy. But that's exactly what happens when people want to celebrate. They don't just like, yeah, you, yeah, yeah. They're looking out. They want to hug. They want to high five. They want to, yeah, you did it, man. Like I was watching the sounds of the game. I'm a big Cowboys fan. And man, that's what they're doing the whole time. Every time someone makes a play, they might have a little solo thing, but then they're turning to the team, hyping each other up. Even on the sideline, like people are coming to them in droves, like, dude, you got it, man. Man, that was incredible. Like hyping each other up. Like that's what we long for.
Mm.
And you don't just stick to yourself and go to the sideline and just act like nothing happened. But that race example I think is perfect. And it speaks to how much we long for that. And it makes me so sad for people who they've come to believe that that's not possible for them to have it. There's this book, am I rambling? There's this book
This is awesome.
called The Boy Crisis. And it's
Oh,
mostly
yeah, I've heard of it. I haven't
it's
read
an
it.
excellent book. Warren Farrell, definitely check it out. He follows me on Instagram. So, but I don't know if he watches my page, but he's great. You can cut that part out if you need to. But
No.
shout out to Warren Farrell.
Shout out.
One of the most, I think, one of the able to articulate the dilemma men face more than anything I've ever read. But he has a story in his book about he was leading these men's group, and this guy came up to him and said, "Man, dude, my dad and I have so many issues. We just can't work it out." And Warren Farrell said, "Hey, I'd like you to go home to your dad." This dude was a man. His dad was older. He goes, "I like next time you see your dad, I'd like you to ask him, 'Hey, dad, what gives you a glint in your eye?'" And the man's like, "Okay, I will." So then the next group, the guy came back. He goes, "I did what you said." And Warren Farrell's like, "Okay, what happened?" He said, "Well, I asked my dad, 'Dad, what gives you a glint in your eye?'" And Warren Farrell says, "And what?" And he goes, and my dad just broke down crying. And he goes, "I never knew anyone cared. I never even thought anyone even cared. No
Mm,
one's ever even asked me, what is it that I enjoy?'" This was like an older man just weeping because he had lived his whole life thinking, no one really cares. You're just a tool. But when his son asked that, it opened up that well.
man, it's got me thinking because I remember my me and my family, we've already talked about this. So shout out to my family. We're doing great. We already revisited this.
Mm.
And so we're in a good state. But one thing that my family and I noticed that we did, which I at the time I couldn't articulate my feelings, or at least I just didn't know how.
Mm.
And on our birthdays, whoever was getting celebrated, it was about what the family wanted for them, not what they wanted for themselves.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, obviously, I know to put it in good words now,
Yeah.
but that was not the case. And so
Mm.
me and my mom actually went through like this ruffle together,
Mm.
and we did it on the podcast. Of it's funny now, but I remember she, got me a quilt for
Mm.
my birthday, and she paid a lot of money for it. And she was like, "How do you like your quilt?" And I could not, with a clear conscience, as a Christian, tell her that I love this quilt. And I just was quiet for a second. I was like, "How do I say this? Well, I don't know how to revisit. Like this is,"
Yeah. Yeah.
and I was
Yeah.
just like, "I don't like it." I didn't know what to
I don't
say.
like it.
I didn't know how to say it, and that's what I said, and it crushed my mom. And it was, we had to take a day or two. She got mad, blah 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 blah, and I got mad, blah 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 blah. And then a couple of days later, we revisit,
Mm.
and basically I tell my mom, I said, "Mom, what I've noticed is it's not just me, but with everyone in the family," and I said, "Yourself included too. Your mom always did what she thought you wanted, not what
Mhm.
you actually wanted. And
Wanted.
she never got to ask." I
Yeah.
said, "I think what our family needs to do now for our birthdays, and I think would bring a lot more value, would just
Mm.
simply asking, what does their envision of their birthday look like, and what would bring so much fulfillment for them?"
Love it.
And we done that,
Mm.
Tyler, and it is so amazing. Like I tell my mom's like, "Mom, tell me what you need." And
Mm.
she'll just send me her Amazon list and I get to pick from it. And I get to buy her a birthday present and it gets a list. And so she doesn't know what I'm getting.
Yeah, that's a total game changer. It totally flips it. It takes something that would be a regular disappointment and frustration, and then it pumped all the enjoyment and life right back into it. Love that I mean, that's a perfect example of how transformative a revisiting, connecting conversation can be because it gave clarity, and then y'all were able to give clear language and then make an adjustment, and then you can see the clear fruit from that. And it takes so much pressure off of everybody. It's clear. That's a perfect example.
Cause I was like, as soon as I was trying to articulate my feeling, like my emotions, I guess, and then my
Mm.
thoughts that I was having.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, that's it. Because you were talking about patterns. And so I tried my best in that conversation to talk not about just how I felt,
Mm.
but the bigger pattern of the family, because we're all in it.
Yeah, yeah, we're all in it. Exactly.
Is that
I
right to
think
go? Do you think
yeah,
that's really important for a conversation? But like, hey, like, it's not just me and you. This is a bigger.
I think that's totally appropriate. The best thing you can do for another person is to tell the truth in love, which is where sometimes people hijack that. I used to work at a hospice, and that was a big thing. You always give your patients their prognosis. How you do it is very important, but that to me would fall in that category because it's like, hey, this isn't just me, like, this is our family, which then cues her into like, oh, wait, like, we need to make a change because no one probably wanted it to not go great.
Mm.
And that's another where people's intentions are the best. That's why I like to validate people's intentions. Because people say, well, okay, that's your intention, if that's still what you did. Yes, that happens, and people have responsibility for what they did. But if I'm trying to work through something with somebody, I will validate their intentions 100%. I might say something like, uh, Mom, I know you just want the best for our family, and everything you're doing is for that goal. Like, and I appreciate what you're doing. I think the problem I have is how you're going about doing it. Because when you do blank, blank, and blank, it doesn't feel like you want the best. But I know that's not the truth. And then we start having a clarifying conversation. But the that's the way I like to do it. Like, validate. I can understand you just want blank. I'm just struggling with how this is going, how this is being played out, because that's not the message that it's sending.
Yeah, because that's what I missed. What you
Mm,
just said, I missed to say to validate her intention.
mm,
Because obviously she spent time on it. She spent money on it. She got it custom built. She thought my favorite color was orange, which has been my favorite color since elementary
yeah,
school because I haven't
yeah.
told her.
I haven't told her. It goes both ways. It goes both ways. That's where assumptions get made, and then people with great intentions ended up missing the mark. But it's not because anyone was inherently doing anything wrong. It's again the pattern they might be stuck in that's not really allowing them to slow down enough to be like, well, wait a second, and kind of clarify that type of stuff. But when you did that, and again, when you just had the hard conversation with her, it allowed y'all an opportunity to really clarify that type of stuff.
Yeah, and I've been really encouraged just to encourage other people that just because you revisit doesn't mean it's going to be fixed then. You guys actually might get a little bit more. Sometimes you get more mad.
It can get more messy. And
And
that's where, in that little model I'm working on, the last little thing that builds up the marriage, it says repeat the process. This isn't my wife and I get in arguments all the time, but we're committed to repairing.
mm,
And now your sister-in-law or your brother or sister or your coworker, they might not be committed to repairing because they're not married to you, or they might have a different values or whatever. But if someone's committed to repairing and sorting something out, you can grow so incredibly close with a person like that. And yeah, it's very powerful,
yeah.
and it makes you sad for people who aren't willing. Again, a thing that could block someone from being willing is trauma, attachment stuff, the pressures of life, uh, even spiritual beliefs that could be overly rigid. I mean, just Christian men struggle with expressing their emotions. Did we talk about Jesus at the Garden of Gethsemane? So, this is what I think about all the time. This popped in my head during the pandemic.
Okay.
I was reading Jesus when he was at the Garden of Gethsemane, and I said, wait a second, what did he just do? He did five things. The first thing he did was he took some of his disciples up to the garden with him, and he shared with them what was going on. The ultimate man was telling other men in his inner circle that I'm overwhelmed, I'm distressed to the point of sorrow. Like, he's messed up. He's telling other men that, super vulnerable. And then he tells them what he needs: stay here and pray for me. So he shares with others. And then the next thing he did was he went further in the garden, at which point he falls on his knees and then he prays to God. Take this cup from me, not my will, but yours be done. Like, I don't want to do this. I'm really messed up. And then God sends angels, comforts him, and all that stuff. And then he rises back up. That's the third thing. And then he returns to the disciples. They've fallen asleep. He corrects them, and he says, the spirit's willing, but the body is weak. If I'm putting myself in those disciples' shoes, it would be distressing for me to hear the ultimate man saying, I'm distressed, I'm overwhelmed. And sometimes when people are overwhelmed and distressed, they just fall asleep. Again, I don't know if that's exactly what happened, but that makes sense to me. And
That's what I
for
do.
Jesus,
I take naps.
yes, I got sleep. And then from Jesus' perspective, but he didn't let it stop him. He then repeated that process of sharing and praying 3 times. And after the third time, he rose back up. And that's when he's like, rise up, my betrayer's at hand. And then he goes forward to his death, burial, and ultimately the major rise up when he's resurrected from the dead. And in that, so what he did was he shared, prayed, he rose up, he repeated that process, and then but it always ended with him rising back up. And I believe what he did was he gave us the perfect model for how to navigate and deal with overwhelming feelings because he's the ultimate man. He did that. One of my military friends said, in the military, you don't ever, if you're in leadership, you don't ever tell the people under you that you're overwhelmed or distressed because it'll mess them up. And you got to have them have their be able to complete the mission. I was like, man, that's interesting. That's the exact opposite of what Jesus did. He exposed them to his feelings, told him what he needed, but he always rose back up. And therefore, he modeled how to navigate overwhelming and distressing feelings. And later, I believe that empowered the disciples as they then went forward. And also believe for me and for anyone listening, if you can relate to that, that it is a incredibly encouraging message that it's okay to confront and express your emotions and to share it with other people and to pray and to rise back up. And whenever that stuff comes on you again, just keep repeating that process, but always rising back up. And as you do that, you just keep it. I view it like, when Jesus rose back up, he rose up that third time with a fortified and grounded perspective of what he was going towards. So God has prepared good works for all of us to do. And as we're getting hijacked by our emotions, you express them, share, pray, but you rise back up and then walk confidently in whatever it is the Lord has in front of you to do. And then you just repeat. But I think in the Christian world, sometimes we have a tendency to be like, emotions bad, emotions bad. But man, Jesus was very expressive. And that's a beyond raw display of emotions. But I think that is not necessarily paid attention to enough.
It's so fascinating that you say that because what I realize too in the Christian circles that I'm a part of is, again, I'm going to reiterate this. I don't think prayer is bad, but we have a tendency to say you just need to pray about it.
Mhm.
When in reality, you probably need EMDR. You probably need to go see a therapist. You probably need to go actually go revisit that with that friend. You don't need to just keep sitting because it's a pattern.
That's where I totally agree. Just pray about it. Again, I'm a huge advocate for prayer. It's very
Me too.
important. If it's being communicated in a way that shames or blocks or communicates like, oh, you're like not really doing right because you just haven't prayed enough about it, like that's your problem, then you're missing opportunities to connect and kind of weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice. When you block somebody, like, just go pray about it. Well, the Bible says blank. I remember in seminary, that's where I did my master's degree down in New Orleans. We had to record sessions. And in one of the sessions, I started to become uh, a little overwhelmed. And when the therapist becomes overwhelmed, you become reactive. And so I don't know how to help this guy. I don't know how to help this guy. And then so I said, well, what does the Bible say about that? And I had to transcribe the whole thing. I was like, oof. And then my seminary professor, she saw that as well, circled it 20 times in red and said, no, 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 no. Like, no. Because when you do that, it again hijacks an opportunity for connection. And then from that connected point, that's when it's best to be like, okay, let's pray about it or move forward to problem solving. But people sometimes jump too quickly towards the just pray about it. But it's usually because they're overwhelmed, they feel powerless to help. So therefore, they just lean on something that unintentionally isn't helpful.
Yeah.
But it sounds helpful because it's true, but it's said or done in a way where it doesn't land as helpful. That's why I was saying earlier how you communicate the truth. I don't think I said this. Maybe I did. I don't, now I'm blanking. But how you communicate the truth is pretty much just as important as the truth itself.
That's right. It's interesting you say it. You kind of gave me goosebumps because I had a teacher that I took class last year,
Mm,
and she was, I thought it was just me, right? I'm like, man, she's blunt.
mm,
Man, I did what the feedback she gave me on my paper did not feel good.
mm.
And so I was like, you know what? I could be sensitive that day because I'm a deep feeler. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
counselors are usually
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
And so I'm in my classmates with a small group, and I'm in there with them, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm a share.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is, how I felt, blah, blah, blah. All of them felt the same way.
Wow.
But you could tell some of their peeping pleasing came out because they felt like we were being too harsh on her,
Mm.
right? Because they were just like, well, maybe this, maybe that. And then I got another thing. I'm just like, this
Mm.
ain't it. And so I sent an email back and forth. Long story short, it really didn't get anywhere. And she almost went, again, didn't. It's pretty fascinating. I'm at Westminster.
Mm.
It's like, so she's more on the theological side. So she's
Mm.
very academic based. And
Mm.
I'm so used to taking counseling courses,
Which is
which is like, of course, the teachers are so nice in the counseling courses
Mm.
because they're so aware of the problems because that's all they do all day. And so, of course, that's so nice. And then I meet this one professor that's probably just normal,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know, but I've been spoiled.
Mm.
And I remember her sending it back and forth. And long story short, I said the exact comment that you said. I said, you're right, so and so. Communication is important, but how you deliver it almost matters more.
Love it. Yes.
And that's when she was like, we'll talk to the dean. I'm like, didn't even acknowledge me.
She blocked it, deflected it again.
Yep.
Yeah, those are indicators of someone who's blocked up because they'll deflect. Because to have that conversation, it requires you to willingly be vulnerable. People do things to prevent or protect themselves from feeling vulnerable all the time. But to have that type of connecting conversation would require her to let her guard down a little bit. And again, people develop guards because that's how they survive life difficulties. And so, what can happen to a person is even you saying it in such a kind, compassionate way could be viewed as a threat. And therefore, people don't like that. So then they'll just avoid it or deflect it as to avoid.
Yeah. And it's crazy too, because I was like, I try to make sure I wrote the first email with a lot of humility. Like I did so
Yeah.
much thought
Mhm,
process, like I
mhm,
wanted to come off right,
mm,
you know. But looking back, because I'm always thinking about what I could do better.
mm.
I'm like, I should have scheduled a Zoom. It's really
Oh,
hard over email.
to communicate the tone and stuff.
Yep. So I was like, I
Mm.
should have done it in Zoom. That would have gave me a little more confidence. Even if it didn't go well, that would have gave me more confidence because then she could see my face expressions. We could
Yeah.
communicate a little bit better.
Mm.
It's hard over text.
Hard, very hard to pick up all the
Yeah.
nuances and stuff.
And so that's the only thing I could think of I could have done better with all the counsel I got. But
Yeah. I mean, you still handle that pretty well.
yeah.
Clear, humility. And again, when someone's living in a more of a confident, humble position, that also is more of a longing state. And that can be exposing to people who might not be, who might be in a protected state. And then again, people don't like to feel threatened.
Mhm.
And that type of conversation can feel threatening, even though it's not actually.
Yeah. And it's fascinating too, because like after that moment, she started giving me a lot more compliments on my assignments. I'm like, so it indirectly worked.
She heard it. She heard it.
I'm like, that's a win. Sometimes you don't have to admit it, but at least you practice it.
Well, that's another thing because even if on the initial or the first a couple times the revisit doesn't go great, you're like, well, that she just said just go complain to Dean about it. Like they dismiss it totally. If it's said in a loving, kind, humble, confident way, it's still that means that they still heard it.
Mhm.
Just in the moment or whatever, they might not have, but that means it stuck to them.
Yep.
And that they actually did think about it because they made an adjustment.
Yeah. And that's what
That's a cool story.
yeah.
I had a professor, he was a Calvinist, very reformed in his theology. I was at a Southern Baptist seminary, so it was a mixture between you could hold different viewpoints, different theologies. Um, but he said one day I was asking a bunch of questions because the Southern Baptists had this thing in the 70s and 80s called some people call it the Southern Baptist resurgence and conservative resurgence, and some people call it like the Southern Baptist controversy. But basically, there were liberals, moderates, and conservatives. And liberals were maybe starting to question the inerrancy of Scripture and things like that. And so there was like a bloodbath where all the liberals and moderates got just totally destroyed and kicked out of all the Southern Baptist institutions. It was just the conservatives left. And this professor was obviously conservative, not politically, theologically. And then I was asking him about because I got fascinated about what occurred because I was born in '85, so I didn't pick up on all of it. And he goes, "You know what, Tyler? I found that the people I agree with the most theologically scare me to death as human beings.
Mm.
And the people who got destroyed in what happened were some of the most caring, compassionate people I know." And that's when the truth and love really stuck to me. It's like just because you have the truth, there's more. There's also how you apply it.
Yeah, I got this quote from Dr. Henry Cloud. It literally, right when you gave me that story, and I can just totally relate because that's me too. Because I'm always fascinated with other people. Like I have
Mm.
so many different types of roommates, people who are atheists, people who are Hindu. Like it's just really cool to have
Mm.
conversations and eat meals with them and talk with them.
Yeah.
But Dr. Henry Cloud says, hard on the issue, soft on the person.
Mhm.
And so that's always kind of stood with me when I was kind of going through that. Have you ever heard of any Dr. Henry Cloud's work?
Yes, he's from Vicksburg,
Yes,
Mississippi.
he is.
Yeah, I've read several of his
What do you think
books.
about first impression? What do you agree
Oh,
with? What do you
beyond impressed. Him and Townsend, the Boundaries book. He has a book on integrity, necessary endings. He just wrote a book a year or two ago about his personal faith story, which is beyond mind blowing, where he shares his story. I think he's next level
Mm,
wise, and he's able to articulate and express ideas, but like that actually is hard on the truth, soft on the person, because he's not slamming the truth down your throat, but he's approaching it in a way where you're actually able to hear and receive it. But no, I'm a big fan. I've read several of his books. My wife's also a big fan. I've called into his talk show a couple of times just to ask questions and stuff. And, one time I did it because I think he lives in California,
yeah.
and he was like, "Wow, it's nice to hear another Mississippi accent."
You know, it's funny that you say that. I probably listened to one of them, and I remember him saying that, and I was like, "There's Tyler."
Yeah, no, I very appreciate his work, and the stuff on boundaries is just transformational.
Man,
But yeah, Andy has really cool blue eyes. Have you noticed that?
I haven't noticed that.
Dude, something about his eyes are, like, piercing.
Yeah,
But he has an Instagram, and I follow him
me
on
too.
there, and I'll comment on his
Me
stuff
too.
sometimes. He's got, like, a team, I'm sure, that does
Oh,
his profile.
dude.
But, yeah, he is great.
Yeah, his
Have you read his book about his
I
faith
haven't.
journey?
The only book that I've read of his is that was like really just like transform my life was when I first got saved. I read the book Boundaries
Mm,
and the specific chapter, Boundaries with God. I'm like, whoa. And then he always uses Jesus, how he had perfect boundaries and like, and his expression emotion and
mhm.
doing all these things. And the amount of pushback he gets from churches is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, he actually came and spoke at Pine Lake several years ago. Yeah, that is interesting to me.
Because I read this book
Mm.
called How to Win a Date Worth Keeping, and there's a
Okay.
lot of people who push back on my dating experience by using that.
Wow.
Henry Cloud built that one, and it's transformed
Mm,
my life of dating,
mm,
especially somebody who
mm.
leans more into people pleasing and
Yeah.
diving into relationships too quickly. It's
Mm,
like using his protocol of how to date well in a time and period that we are today.
yeah.
It transformed to a sense where I learned more about myself than I did my date.
Mm.
like the bad tendencies I have, the cold body language, the conversations, the not revisiting, like
Mhm.
not being a provider and a protector, like
Yeah.
all these biblical heavy convictions. He's such a he can
Mhm.
write so well. I know he has a team
Oh,
and all that, but it's still his
yeah.
words. It's
I
just
prefer his writing even to when he's like, I enjoy him talking, but I almost prefer the way he writes more.
100%. And what's fascinating about How to Win a Date Worth Keeping book
Mm.
is I always get a lot of pushback in the church already for this. Like CJ just dates weird. I'm just like, but it's just like the interesting point is we no longer live in the 60s and the
Mhm.
50s where you have Johnny down the street that you know his parents.
Mhm.
The community is more tied because you actually have to depend on each other.
Yeah.
It's just a different time period. And
Mhm.
we think that model still exists today. We're so
People
much more independent today.
Mhm. Yeah, people are very stuck on roles and expectations. And again, that's no judgment on anybody because we all do it. That I would view as a subtle form of a protection.
Mm,
You we are all trying to make sense of the world. So once someone makes sense of the world, they can kind of lock in like this is just how it is. And that can be a subtle form of a way of protecting yourself because that allows you to be like, okay, this is what it is, this is how it works. But when new information gets presented, or maybe the reality doesn't totally fit with that, they'll block it or say it's bad. And again, that's not saying you uh totally adjust your truth or whatever. I like to, is it congruent with scripture or not? There's certain hard lines, but what happens is people will get so rigid and they won't allow for nuances or expanding their thoughts or approach because that's how they made sense of the world and that's what allows them to feel safe. People are always asking in subtle ways, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? It's like, oh, I do blank, 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 and blank, and therefore I am safe, secure, stable. I follow this formula. But the problem with that is it blocks out creativity, new thoughts, any type of nuance. Because, like, that's bad. You shouldn't think like that. The Bible says blank. But they could be interpreted wrong. They'll do that, cuts off all that stuff, and it leaves them beyond vulnerable, though they don't feel like it, for something to happen in their life where they lose all that stuff. And then once all the worldview they established gets crumbled, then they're literally left like with nothing, beyond overwhelmed. But if you're kind of, that's interesting. I'm going to consider that before I react. Then it allows you more space as that stuff's occurring to kind of like work on it or think through it. But yeah, I view hyper rigid again, not there's core doctrine essential to salvation that should be rigid.
Jesus is the only way.
Yeah, these are some things
Yeah.
that are firm in my belief, like
Yeah.
very firm. There's other things though that when people try to silence questioning or you're doubting because of that, it's like, well, golly, like Jesus talked about a mustard seed, and like a lot of times people in the Christian world feel this pressure to have all faith all
The
the time.
time.
It's like, dude, like Jesus talked about a mustard seed. It's okay to doubt. He was overwhelmed. He was distressed. And when and that is all totally allowable. And it's actually good because when you do that, it's always an opportunity to grow closer to God. Just like when we revisit in our human relationships, it's an opportunity to grow closer. When a disruption occurs between our faith or our worldview in connection with God, revisiting it is the same option to grow closer and deeper and be more fortified in the truth you believe and then go forward and live.
Yeah.
But if it's block, 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 it eliminates growth.
Yep. And I've noticed too the people who, this might sound harsh, but I think it's just true. The people who I would never take a marriage advice from always give me a marriage advice from.
Mm.
I'm just like,
Mhm.
like I would
Mhm.
never take that. Like there's marriages I would like admire, and
Yeah.
they're always the slower ones.
Mm.
They always want to know the context. They want to know the
Yeah.
situation. Well,
They
how
wanna
does it work for
understand.
you? Like, how are you
Mhm.
communicating? How do they like to communicate? It's just like, it's very fascinating. And then like, so the protocol that I use for the dating, and you tell me what you think, just an honest
Yeah.
review.
I'm excited
All
to
right.
hear
And
it.
so Dr. Henry Cloud basically, in a sense, if you have a pattern, he wants you to break it. So you got to try something different. Stop baiting your head on the wall.
Yeah.
This was
Good,
just
good,
worked
good.
for me. It might not work for
Mhm,
you, but this
mhm.
is what worked for me.
Yeah.
So for the very first time I did it, I'm not so rigid now because I feel like I'm breaking those patterns.
Mm.
But for the first 6 months, you just date. It's not exclusive. You just date with people. And you let people know that you're just dating for 6 months to getting to know people in friendship. And you're more gladly to meet with them multiple times, but that's a non-negotiable. You're trying to break patterns. You're trying to slow down.
Mm. Mm.
So I did that. Wound up dating a girl after that.
Mm.
Was great. One of the best relationships I have was my
Yeah.
first believer. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like I have a trend now since I've learned through that 6 months of how to slow down,
Mm.
what I actually liked. Certain women were actually a lot more attractive than I ever thought they were because I actually had to slow down and I get
Yeah.
captivated by some of my lustful thoughts or being crossing the boundaries.
Yeah.
And so obviously I'm not that rigid now,
Yeah.
but now what I do is if I've never met a girl before, I'm very upfront about it. Once we hit about the 3 to 5th date marker, I'm like, all right, I want to revisit this. I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
this is how I date. And so I say roughly about 4 to 6 months, if we have nobody in common, I'm just dating you. We're
Yeah.
not exclusive. We're not boyfriend and girlfriend. We're
Mhm.
just dating to get to know each other. You
Mhm.
can call it
Mhm.
courtship.
Yeah.
If we get past that marker and we feel like, hey, this is we have a lot of compatibilities together. We feel like we have chemistry. We feel like we're going the right direction. We have the
Yeah.
same goals in mind, and there's no like red flags with
Yeah.
finances and politics.
Mhm.
Christian is just a non-negotiable for me.
Yeah.
That's like my core value.
Mm.
And then I'm like, all right, then we can be an exclusive relationship where I'm
Mm.
solely only dating you.
Mm.
And then based off that, it goes kind of quick because we dated so
Yeah.
well that within 4 to 6 months, I should know if I'm going to marry you or not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, the engagement, another 4 to 6 months or whatever. Obviously, I'm not that black and white. That's why I always give
That's just like a
ranges. Just a
framework.
framework. I'm
Yeah.
not saying like
Yeah.
it has to be this done this way,
Yeah.
but it's just that's what's helped for me. And it's amazing the pushback I get from that.
What pushback do you
They
receive?
say it's weird
What do they say is weird about
because
it?
they said you shouldn't be dating multiple people.
At one time? Why does that what's the rationale behind why that is
Because it's
wrong or weird?
dishonest. It's not. And I was like, well, I communicate with the people I've had. Like I tell people all the time, like it's not just like, what's the big deal? Like, because they think, and this is what I'm thinking that they think. Like I haven't, when I ask them, they kind of divert. They don't want to get in the
Okay.
weeds. It makes them uncomfortable for some reason. Every time I
Once
talk to
they
them.
start getting kind of questioned
Yeah, when I
about
start to
it?
reverse it, I'm like, oh, trying to get to know what their biases are.
Mm.
One of us said is that this is my assumption is they have this dating outlook
Like almost like a cultural view
of
of
dating, and they're like, this is how I did it. This is how we always done it. You date one person, you get to know them, and you take them out for dinner. You pick them up from their house. Like it's very romantic. And what Dr. Henry Cloud says actually, it should be the opposite. Getting too romantic too quickly, even the time of the day is not good.
that's a red flag to me.
To me too. And when I talk to other counselors, they're like, this is great.
It's
Like I'm gonna start telling people to read that book. But it's like when you talk to these people who haven't had that experience or they're stuck back in the 1950s or 60s or even the 80s, it's just like it's changed a little bit. Now, there's certain like your scenario. You found a girl you like, it worked out for you guys. It's great. But what a lot of people don't understand, it's not like that for everyone.
No, 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 no. Especially in the world we live in now. So when I lived in Italy, they would say it was a totally different culture, different world. And they would say, just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. But I would apply the same approach to this. Just because it's weird or different doesn't mean it's wrong. It sounds like these people are, they feel confused or like this is odd. Like I feel uncomfortable. Therefore, they've attached a thought to it. This is bad. He needs to stop. And then that's what you're receiving from them. And then when you ask for clarifying questions, it sounds like they haven't fully fleshed that out. So they're like, well, you just shouldn't do that.
Yep,
Like,
that's
just
exactly
not
what they
how
say.
we did it. And then the conversation ends. Yeah, I could see how you're getting pushback because it's different, but it sounds like it's been meaningful. A question I ask myself all the time, and I'll just ask you this question, and then you
Yeah.
just respond. The longer you've been dating like that, do you feel more like the person God has created you to be or less?
Without hesitation, I'm so much more close to the Lord.
Bam.
Like like it has made me break codependency. It has made me see women more correctly. Like
Mm,
it is remarkable. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. But I want to be careful my passion doesn't say like it worked for me because I had such a bad view of women
mm,
and such a bad past
mm.
of growing up with a lot of sex and drugs. And
Yeah.
like obviously some of that stuff I never got into, but I was
Mhm.
around it.
Yeah.
And so and then I also grew up in a home that wasn't, my parents loved me, but they didn't have the ideal marriage.
Mhm, mhm.
And it actually made me like, I want nothing to do with that. That looks miserable. Right. And so I had all these, like you said, these biases and these patterns and
Yeah.
these emotions that went with it.
Mhm.
That dating protocol, Brooke, it was like EMDR,
Yeah.
but like exposure therapy, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
It
like, it was crazy. I'm
mhm.
like, there's this one girl I like so much. I was like, I want to date her exclusively so bad. And then like a week later, I didn't even like her anymore. I'm like, oh, that's why I don't do that.
Exactly. S You answered the question. That's what I think that's a question I like to ask myself to kind of examine. Cause like, okay, the longer I'm doing it this way, I feel more like who God created me to be. And then you just gave 4 or 5 incredible examples of fruit, understanding. You've gotten to know yourself more through this process. You've come to understand what you like, what you don't like, how you want to be treated, how to treat other people, and you haven't harmed anybody. You've challenged some people's worldviews
Yep.
and which that's not harm, that's actually good. Because it gives them now an opportunity to slow down if they're willing to take it. Like, why am I so reactive to that? That's even fruit
That's the question I
too.
want to know. It's like,
Mm.
why are you so reactive about
Yeah,
that?
yeah. It's like it's just a gut reaction to something that's again not wrong but different.
Right.
Because that's what happened in Italy a lot. It's like this is weird. That's wrong. You shouldn't do that. It's like this is their culture. It's not wrong that you have dinner at 10 o'clock at night just because you're used to eating dinner at 6. Like, that's not wrong. Like, it's just different.
Different.
But yeah. So to me, that's the question I like to ask. Because if you say yes and you said a definitive yes, again, it's clear that God has used this approach to grow you closer to Him and to more fully understand yourself, which is only going to help and be good for whoever you do end up
Yeah.
marrying. And they're going to be thankful for that because you're ironing out and working out stuff that you're going to be working out stuff your whole marriage anyway, but you're kind of clearing out some stuff to be prepared.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. Because what happens is it's like if with that question, I'll ask this question in my marriage. The longer I've been married, do I feel more like who God created me to be or less? And if I say more, I'm like, yes, okay, we're going to keep doing what we're doing because I believe through my marriage, I should be becoming more and more like the person God created me to be. My marriage is the most important human relationship in my individual process of sanctification. No one sees me like my wife does. No one talks to me to the level with which we do. So yes, I'm going to celebrate that. And if I say, no, I feel less, but it's something I'm committed to and I know is good, then that communicates to me, okay, we need to slow down. And there's some stuff that clearly we haven't repaired.
Mm,
Because if we're repairing, we're going to say yes and then just keep doing that. But that's why I love your answer.
yeah. Yeah. And it's just, I've had girls get mad at me once they get it to like 3 to 5 days. Then it's like, you've been talking to other girls. I'm like, and you haven't?
Because you've
Because they have too. And so,
because you've been up front with them.
yeah.
That's the thing. It's not like you're being shady or
Going
you're
around,
being
sleeping around.
beyond upfront. And that's another. It's kind of like a weed out thing.
Oh, some of
Yeah.
those girls were very reactive. Like you said, they were blocked up.
It exposes, it weeds out, and it protects you, protects them. And what it will do, it gives clarity. And if someone does have a problem with it
They don't have to.
about about the third or fourth date and y'all talk about it and maybe that conversation gets repaired and revisited where y'all feel closer, you're not saying your protocol is beyond fixed and it's got to be super rigid. I mean, once if that happens, you could even adjust your approach and
Absolutely.
modify it.
Absolutely.
But so I think that is a incredibly wise way to date because it you've learned more about yourself. It's not harming anybody. You're being straight up about what's happening and it creates opportunities to basically expose and flesh stuff out that's going to be there anyway.
Right.
So why not if there's a way to get this stuff out at the onset so we all know what we're working with, why wouldn't I? Cuz I don't it doesn't waste people's time.
Yeah,
Your time or their time.
that's right. Yep. And it's one of my sisters told me one time was like, because I told her I was like I had a girl get mad at me, and she was like, "Don't let her fool you." She was talking to other people too. She was just mad because she wasn't the only one you had.
You bet.
She was like, "Girls are slick, CJ." And I'm like, okay, because me taking over responsibility, being a people pleaser, I was like, well, maybe I am doing something wrong. But even like Dr. Henry Cloud said, this is not going to be popular in the Christian church. It's like, I'll let you know right away. He said that in one of his, I forget, it was a podcast or a YouTube clip or something. He was like, I've already get a lot of pushback. You're letting people date other people. It's like, they're not exclusive. And technically, you're single until you do the vow. So,
I mean, it'd be one thing if you were like overly engaging physically and with things like that,
Yep.
because then at that point, that would be you'd be playing with people's
Emotions, yep.
hearts and emotions, and that I could totally understand. Some, hey,
pump the
CJ, like,
brakes.
can we talk about how you're applying this approach?
Absolutely.
But the way you just described it, how you're applying it, to me, it communicates respect for yourself, respect for the institution of marriage, because you want to marry someone that y'all are aligned in y'all's worldview and values, and it respects those people that you're dating.
Yep.
And like, who does not want that?
That's right.
And then to pigeonhole people and again go super restrictive because that's how the culture is. Like cultures get stuff wrong all the time.
Yes.
Like it just happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the stuff that'll happen because again I view that as a subtle form of a protection because that approach pushes against that, and then people get reactive to it and then try to stop it.
Yeah.
And if you don't stop it, then something's wrong with you. But that's not just because someone believes that does not mean that's actually the truth.
That's right. And yeah, that's one thing I wrestled with too, is just like, I don't want to come across like I've done this protocol perfectly. Like, cause I haven't, cause there's been times where I'm just like, oh, I shouldn't have kissed her. Don't know why I did that. And we revisit, like, listen, like I normally don't do that. I'm not kissing all these other girls.
Well, you described that earlier.
Right.
Y'all revisited.
And we worked it out. Like, but it's just like, I also don't want to come across like, I do it perfectly. Like, no, I don't. I just want to make sure I come across.
Yeah. No, I said this term earlier, but I didn't define it. I believe the ideal way is to live in a confident, humble way. Have we talked about this before? So I don't think the church does a good job defining this. I define confidence and humility as just being who God created you to be, nothing more, nothing less. When that's like a sweet spot, confident and humble. That's what I believe God has called us to be, confident and humble people. You can be both at the same time. Jesus perfectly modeled that. What happens though is under pressure or our insecurities or stuff that we haven't healed from, or just all the stuff that we talked about, with that's not getting resolved, a person has a tendency to try to be more than who God created them to be. And once they leave that confident, humble position, they slide up into a kind of a prideful state where now they have to protect and make sure they don't get exposed. It's all on me. If I don't do it, nobody will. Like, no one understands me. Like, whatever it is. Like, this is the only way to do this. Like, they'll go too high. And then once they're up there, what it does is it's a way to protect yourself from feeling vulnerable. But the reality is you're still vulnerable.
Yeah.
Once you're up there, though, you're extra vulnerable because now something can take that away from you. And then when that happens, it drops you too low to where now you're believing you're less than who God created you to be, which would be shame or self deprecation.
Right.
And once someone's down there, they're like, what's the point? I'm the worst. Nobody cares. Like I'm a failure. They're just way too down. And then it's like, oh, I can't stay down here. There's stuff I got to do. And they can start cycling between pride and shame, pride and shame, pride and shame. And they're missing the sweet spot of confidence and humility. And I believe the Christian life is accepting the reality that we're all going to leave that sweet spot. But as Christians, we are called to return back. And the way that happens is you just look at Job, all this terrible stuff's happening to him. He's like, why, why? But God never tells Job why.
Hmm.
He just tells Job who he is. And when God exposes Job to who he is, that's when Job says, my ears have heard about you. Now my eyes have seen you, and I'm humbled. He falls on his knees. But God doesn't leave him there. He restores him in confidence as Job goes back into his life. And I believe that's part of our sanctification. We're slowly getting humbled. We're leaving the sweet spot. But if we're returning back and we're experiencing God in new ways, because that's what happened to Job. When he said, my ears have heard you, now my eyes have seen you. He's basically saying, I've experienced you in a new way. And I see more clearly who you are and who I am. And that humbled me. And then as we're doing that as Christians, and we're coming more like Christ, living more in that confident, humble position, it is beyond attractive, but it is also incredibly threatening to someone who might be in a prideful state or a person who's in like a shame state, because it doesn't have to prove itself. Pride says, look at me, I got all this, blah, 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 blah. And shame's like, nothing good here, don't. But confidence and humility just doesn't have to say anything. It's just what it is. And so what can happen is, does that make sense?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
I can't stress that enough. I think especially in the Presbyterian denomination that I'm in, it's like they're so concerned about knowledge that they lack emotion whatsoever. Like they barely even clap. Like it's a running joke. Like,
is that where the frozen chosen?
yes. Okay. And it's so I'm like coming from a church background that was non-existent. Like I was 24 years old when I got saved. I'm 34 now. I've been a Christian for 10 years. And so it's just like, I'm exactly what you're saying is like what I see. I'm just like, okay, you have this church. I mean, and it's not just my church. I'm not picking up my church. I love my church. Like I'm a member there. This is great. But the Presbyterian denomination in general is just very heavy. And I would say not even knowledge, intellect.
And that is where, again, I'm not in that denomination. I'm go to a Southern Baptist church, which has its ups and downs too.
Yeah, I don't know if you know the running joke about Baptists.
What is
you
it?
might already know this because this is how I classify them because I've been to both. Okay, you tell me what you think about this. I think it's kind of funny. So you have the Presbyterians and a stick figure. They have a big old head, little body. So their head's just like full of knowledge, just walking all over the place. And then you have the Baptists who got the muscles, the boots on, small head, and they're just fighting each other when they both actually need to come together.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's right, but
I mean, well, the Southern Baptist is an interesting congregation because it has there's a Southern Baptist convention. Every Southern Baptist church that is affiliated with the Southern Baptist Convention is autonomous. We all agree. I mean, there can be debates about it, but there's this thing called the Southern Baptist Faith and Message, which basically outlines the doctrines of the church. And so Southern Baptist churches agree with that Southern Baptist faith and message. But in that, there's nuances and allowances for different approaches. You could be a Calvinist, you could be an Arminian, you could hold that, but there's certain key things. And then each church is autonomous, so therefore they can operate how they function for their local church. And then 3 or so days a year, all they send these delegates that meet at a convention where they talk about different things and different policies. But the Southern Baptist Convention, as like a physical form, only exists like those 3 days, and the rest of the time it's autonomous. They have committees and
Right.
like the IMB and the the International Mission Board, the North American Mission Board, Lifeway. The seminaries are all funded through the Southern Baptist Convention. They receive funding from that. But yes, when someone gets too puffed up with knowledge, that can also be a subtle way of going too high. And so when a person is too high, what they end up doing is when they're talking to somebody, because they're so high, it comes across like they're talking down to you and shaming you. And at that point, it's hard to hear the knowledge that's being departed because it comes across like you're being shamed. And at that point, there's too big of a gap and you can't really hear. But
I'm with
that
you.
can happen totally unintentionally and subtly.
Yeah.
We all dip up and down. And that's Paul David Tripp. He's Presbyterian. He has a book called Dangerous Calling, which is an excellent book in which he describes, especially ministers and pastors, because of the pressures, can unintentionally and the culture elevate themselves above the body of Christ. And it can create a disconnect between their public persona and actually the details of their personal life.
Right.
And that creates a massive gap and a huge opportunity for some type of wrong or moral failing or something to happen.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm blessed to be a part of the Presbyterian denomination. The only reason why I chose that church is because I just like their preaching. I was like, this is good stuff.
Oh, my favorite preachers are all
Yeah,
Presbyterian.
they're phenomenal. Like they're unbelievably smart. And that's one of the things that I have a lot of conversations with a lot of the congregate members is emotions. It's because they don't know what to do with them.
They don't know
And
what to do with them.
and they don't get validated.
Uh-huh.
It's all about what we know, how we know, and they all pros and cons to each denomination, but that's the one that I see in mine. I'm just like, man, because the reason why I say that, because we have a discipleship group that's going, and when I share some of the things, once we know the group is safe, it's kind of like a locked in group.
Yeah.
It's very heavy accountability. You got to show up once a week for 90 minutes. There's the groups roughly between 2 to 7 people max. It has to be all males or all females. Wow. Like it's very intentional. So you can confess, you can grow closer to the Lord. And so once they get in the group, I've noticed that when I share, like what Jesus did, when you gave me that story about how he shared in the garden, like it kind of gave me goosebumps. I'm like, oh, I didn't even like this. I didn't even know I was doing that. Cool thing about the Holy Spirit, he just does it. You don't even have to have the knowledge sometimes to do it. And when I share about the things that I'm currently struggling with or that I have defeated as of now, they all of a sudden get softer. They're like, oh, and then they don't elevate me either just because I'm leading the group. It's like now we're shoulder to shoulder, like battle buddies in a bunker, shooting at the same target.
We're in this together.
Yes.
And it's connecting, it's fortifying, and it reinforces like, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. Yep. One's not supposed to be above the other. We're all trying to work together to fulfill the Great Commission. Yep. Yeah. Love that. I think that's totally spot on. And that's what I find unfortunate is that when people block the opportunities to have that type of connection. And again, there's multiple reasons why people do it, but it is sad to me.
Yep. And that's what I always tell the discipleship group too, that I have. Like, you might not have to share about every sin that you do, because we have a tendency to talk about taking too much over responsibility. But I'm just like, but if you're not sharing it with anyone, including the Lord, then that's not just the group problem. That's something that's deeper that you're really struggling with and that you need to hash out, because it's just keeping you pent up.
Because it can end up getting you in a habitual pattern again, and once a person gets locked into a pattern, they can just dig themselves
Deeper and
deeper and
deeper.
deeper. And then at that point, I know I keep using the word vulnerable. They're more vulnerable to other things that might take them further in it, or they're less likely to expose themselves because now they're like stuck in shame, and then that they could just drift
Yep.
or block,
Yep.
and that so I think you're spot on.
Yeah. And I think that's why one of the reasons why I'm pushing the discipleship group so much and trying to advocate older gentlemen to do it too,
Mhm,
because not a young men are, they look at the elders at our church, which are phenomenal,
mhm,
which I'm glad they're leading our church.
mhm.
But do any of the younger men in the church know what actually they struggle with? Obviously, you need to share it where it's safe and confidential.
Yeah.
Not saying that. I don't think you should just go out shooting your gun from the hip.
Well, that would be unwise,
Unwise.
and
Right.
because you're called to be wise and to be, you know, yeah, that would be irresponsible. That would be kind of like the emotional diarrhea of just,
That's right.
"Ah,"
That's right.
like that's not edifying or
Nope.
helpful.
And so
There's appropriate
I
places.
just feel like we're constipated at our
Yeah,
church, you know,
that
when
would make
that comes to
sense.
that stuff. And like,
Y'all
I feel
need
like
an
we're getting
you
better,
need an enema.
right? Yes, we need an enema. And so we're getting better. I do truly do that with our leadership that
Mhm.
we have. But I'm like, some of our elders that we have, they're like, they have so much knowledge and so much wisdom, and they've been through so much, whether it's death, whether it's a tough marriage, whatever they could do. And they can minister to some of these men who think that these older men just don't struggle because they never show any emotion. Like you said, the Christian
'Cause
men,
they act like they're all,
they're stoic.
and that's
And
where,
that's not their intention.
no, it's not totally unintentional, and and that's where again, we're always communicating with other people. In the EFT, uh, emotionally focused thing, she calls it, Sue Johnson, God rest her soul. She died a year or two ago. She calls it ARE. She goes, in your interactions, you're always asking yourself, is this person accessible, responsive, and engaged? And if they're not, it sends you a message. So if someone is stoic, and again, not wrong to be that, some people's personalities are more like that. It, if it's not getting clarified though, it's sending a messages that people are going to interpret. And again, people tend to interpret based on what they see. That's why again the pastor gets held so high. It's like, oh, he brings the word. He's so wise, he doesn't struggle with this and this because look at what he does, what I can see. But that doesn't show the heart. And so if it doesn't appear as if someone's accessible, responsive, and engaged, then a person's less likely to approach you. If
Mm,
you and I were, and there was a third person in here, and I was like, wow, this is a really cool setup, which it is. And then you were to be like, yeah, man, we worked on this and that. And gosh, this was interesting how we figure out how to do this lighting setup. You engage, you told me, oh, I'm accessible, I'm responsive, and I'm engaged. But if the other person was just on their phone, like, oh, yeah, it's pretty cool,
I feel that.
instinctually, I will naturally focus more on talking with you because you've told me, oh, he's engaged with me. The other person, I'm just not going to want to keep hitting a brick wall. And that's where, does that make sense?
Yes, and I want this gave me an idea. Okay, last time a while back, I did the podcast and I was the guest, and
On your podcast?
yes,
Oh,
and
cool,
Ben did
cool.
me because he wanted to talk about
What?
me,
Neat,
and Ben's
neat.
really good. He's really good at asking
Yeah.
questions and getting to know, and it was great. But
Mm,
what I noticed is, and I don't know if you probably are going to see now why I'm sitting the way I'm sitting, why I really haven't touched my iPad.
mm.
It's been right here for the whole time, and I haven't touched it. Um, and I looked over the questions ahead of time
Mm,
because what I noticed is, and again, this wasn't Ben's intention, but when he kept looking at his iPad and he was getting ready for the next question, even though I haven't finished, I
mhm.
felt like I wasn't seen. I felt like he wasn't being
Yeah.
heard. And so I felt all these emotions. And I'm just like, how can I make my future guest not feel what I feel?
Ah,
And it
yeah.
just clicked for me. I'm
Mm,
just like, okay, got it. And so I'm just like,
mm,
intentionally listen, let them finish
mhm.
the conversation, ask good questions, and the questions will come. If you're not, you just take a brief pause. And like you said, no pressure.
No pressure.
And that's
No
what I've realized
pressure.
is if I'm less pressure, they also feel and they feel comfortable. And like now me and you are over here grabbing pillows and relaxing, taking our shoes off.
But you feed off of each other.
Right.
And that's even for me, like today, when we first started, I had a week and a half ago, my wife and I looked at our schedule and we had committed to some stuff and something new was about to be added for tonight. And we said, "Oh, we we don't based on what we have this week, if we go to this, we don't have margin for to take on any unexpected stressors."
Mm.
And so therefore we know if we do this, we're going to be too close to our limit. And then if that we get tipped over, we're not going to be present with our children on Saturday and Sunday. We're going to be just too exhausted. And we already have something Saturday night. And we really value being present with our family. My kids are in school all day. When I get home tonight, I'm just going to see them in bed. I saw them for an hour this morning. So I will only get to see my children for an hour and a half today.
Mm.
Like I love my time with my
Yeah.
kids. So a week and a half ago, we messaged the people and said, "I'm so sorry. We had some other commitments prior to this one coming up. We're not going to be able to make it, but we would love to take y'all out to eat to celebrate at a different time." So we said that. Then this morning, I woke up at 1 o'clock with a head splitting migraine. I've been up since 1 o'clock with a terrible migraine. But I woke up and I was in the shower trying to mitigate it because it's been very bad. But I found myself uh, praying a prayer of gratitude. Lord, thank you for that foresight because Jamie and I were proactive and said no to something. I now have the space to deal with this migraine and then still go talk at the school today. I did a talk about counseling and then still go have my full work schedule and then come do this podcast and then go get some rest because we said no a week and a half ago. It allowed the room because that was stressful.
Mm.
And I'm doing a 36-hour fast right now. So I haven't eaten, I guess now in 26 hours. So that's going on too. But it allowed for all that. But if we had said yes because we wanted to please or whatever, I would not have had the margin for my day to day because I've been up since 1 a.m. with the migraine.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that's one of the top things I talk with my clients about is schedule communication.
Mm.
If you're single, then sweet, know your parameters, your triggers, or what you are, what your capacity is. And then like even so I've shared this with a lot of times with spouses is like, you got to share a calendar with each other
Yeah.
or you just
Oh,
have no idea what's going on.
You're just
And the amount of pushback I get from that is ridiculous.
the pushback is
Yeah.
so interesting.
It's very interesting. I don't know if
Because
it's
really what you're pushing for is
You're just
more
like,
communication,
why
more
does he
talking.
need to know this? Why do you know this? I'm just like,
Should
because
be on the
you're
same
not
page.
roommates. Like, you're not-
Exactly.
I'm like, because you're not roommates.
It's like good to talk to your spouse. Yeah. But all that to say, yeah, I kind of came in here and I really like the restaurant right next to you and the food truck right next to you. So I came in, my mouth is dry. I'm trying not to chew gum. I have a terrible taste in my mouth because I haven't eaten in over a day and I've just been sipping on water. So my brain was like, kind of like, oh man, maybe I could get that food. So it took my brain a minute to settle in.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
You,
But,
you just don't know what you don't know, right?
You
So it's
don't
like,
know what
I
you
had
don't
no
know.
idea that was your state when you walked in.
And I just transitioned out of my counseling sessions.
Oh, yes. And that's hard. Because, like, in a sense where you're in work mode and, like, okay, now I just need to have conversation.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, this is not a counseling session. This is a podcast.
Today was interesting because this stuff was sandwiched in between my work, providing stuff to these high school students, talking about stuff, then work, and then transition out. So, but all that to say, and then the being up since 1 a.m.
Man.
But it was just really interesting, though. I was like, wow, I'm glad we had communicated that and made a decision that aligned with our values. It gave room for unexpected. Unfortunately, that happened this morning. Right now my headache is gone. Thank you.
Thank Lord.
But it when I have the migraines, it has like it just kind of depletes me more.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to do this fast, which has been so good for me. I've been doing a cycle. This is my fourth round of the 36 hours.
Yeah.
It's been really
Now,
interesting.
what made you want to do it?
I have ge- in the last several years I've gained a lot of weight, and I used to overplace my identity in how fit I was. I was very fit and looked pretty good.
Yeah.
And then I had my appendix removed, a gallbladder, my appendix removed, and then I started getting these debilitating migraines. And the more I had them, the energy I had to go work out started to dissipate. And then on top of that, we had children and a job. So over time, it just whittled down to where I totally had stopped working out, and I was just work, kids, survive the migraines.
Yeah.
And then last Friday evening, I was just sitting. I like to take baths. That's the way I like to get some brain space back. A good
Dude.
warm bath. And I think well in the
Dude, I'm
the
telling you right now,
bathtub.
we did this Airbnb jumping subjects on a hot tub. I was in that sucker every night.
Dude, it's so relaxing. Okay, so I was in there and I think I saw a reel and it just mentioned fasting. And then something clicked. I said, okay, uh, it's 6 o'clock. No, it was 7 o'clock. I don't remember what time it was. It was after the kids went to bed, so maybe 7:30 or 8. And I was like, it was 8. And I was like, oh. I said, well, I don't know if I can go 36 hours without eating, but I have a terrible migraine. I know inflammation is part of that. I said, what if I just did that this weekend and then I ate my next meal at Sunday at 8:30, therefore it'd be around the 36 hours. I was like, well, I can do that because Saturday we're going to be busy doing the kids' soccer until 2 o'clock. At that point, I'll be focused on watching them, and then I'll come home and it'll be the Mississippi State game, and I could just watch that, and I could drink water with a little salt in it. And by the time that game's over, it's almost bedtime, and I'll just go to sleep. And by the time I wake up, we'll get ready for church, and then I can have some uh, some eggs over easy and start and eat a little something. I was like, oh, I can do that.
Right.
So I just did it, and
Do you feel like it's helping your migraines?
uh, I'm hoping long long term it will. Today, what this was only migraine I had this week.
And that's big for you.
Big for me.
Okay.
I usually get 3 a week.
Wow.
They were very bad. But the
Like, what do you mean by very bad?
like
Like, did you have to lay down and just wait until they go
lay
away?
down, I'll lose parts of my vision.
Wow.
Like when sometimes it'll hit, like one time I was in a couple session and it just came on me and I literally couldn't see one of the people in the room. And I said, "Hey, I'm so sorry. Um, I'm not able to. I know you're not speaking, but I'm not literally able to see you right now. Do you mind? So I can't pick up any nonverbals. Like, do you mind telling me what you're communicating right now?" And then the person started sharing, and it ended up being an incredible part of our session because that person's tendency was to not share. But then because I had the migraine and I literally couldn't see them, they were willing because they knew it helped me and it majorly helped them because then they express things that usually they wouldn't verbally express. So even that, like the Lord totally used that time. It was really cool. But yeah, they just hit. But I'm hoping it'll help.
Now, when did it start?
They started well, Jamie and I got married. And then before I had the gallbladder, I had undiagnosed mono.
Man.
And so I was still working out and doing all that, but I was like, I couldn't walk up the steps.
Wow.
And I told Jamie, I said, man, I think I'm just having a hard time adjusting to being married. She didn't like that. And then I went to the doctor to get like some life insurance policy because my wife's dad died right before she was born. And so she never met her dad, and he died of some kind of unusual medical circumstances. So it's really important for Jamie that her and I have a life insurance policy because he didn't. And then when he died, my mother-in-law was raising two children.
Mm.
It's just tough. And so she really wanted us to get a life insurance policy just in case. And then so I did blood work for that, and it was through the roof. And they said, you need to go. And I went to the doctor. They said, oh, you just have mono. Give it a couple months and get it retested. But after that, the migraines amped up. And then I have
So did you have
scoliosis.
migraines during mono?
No,
Okay.
I didn't. It was after that they started amping up, and then they've just progressively got worse.
Jeez.
I have scoliosis, so I had the spinal fusion. So my basically my almost my whole spine is fused with two titanium rods.
Really?
And so that puts a lot of extra pressure on the top of my spine and the very
Now,
bottom.
when did you have surgery on that?
That was when I was 15 years old.
Holy cow.
It was a major surgery. They cut your
Dude,
whole
yeah.
back open.
I mean,
So
what you described didn't even do justice. I was just like, man, I got to see. That is insane.
So my back's still curved. That's why I'm actually angled more this way. It's not because I'm not wanting to be that way,
It just
but
hurt.
I have a hump that kind of pushes me
That
this
way.
way. That's another thing to go to subtle nonverbals. If my shoulders are actually leaning this way, which it could be sending you a message that I'm not as engaged. Because versus my shoulders were right on you, it kind of looks a little different. But my back is humped, so it kind of puts me.
They put you that way.
But yeah, had the surgery, but then all the mono, and then the gallbladder, and then I just got more and more debilitated.
Yeah.
And then after the two kids, uh, and then when the pandemic hit, everyone went to everyone in my office went to virtual, but I still felt really convicted that I wanted to remain in person. So I remained in person and during that time, I was picked up a lot of the administrative duties too, because the lady who was doing our admin, it just circumstantially the phone's getting routed to her cell phone just wasn't working. So I was beyond stressed.
Oh, wow.
And so at that point, I had to make, in my mind, a decision. So I was like, well, I got to work because I'm the sole breadwinner of our family. And our house had flooded. And my wife was sick with several kidney stones.
Oh,
She had
man.
kidney stones in both kidneys. And she was put out of commission for that knocked her out for about a month or two.
Jeez.
She was so sick with
Yeah.
both the kidneys had multiple in them. And so we just went through the ringer, but I knew I had to work and but also knew and I had to do a lot for the children.
Yeah.
So just circumstantially I just stopped, and then the migraines got worse. But
Yeah.
last Friday I was like, man, it just kind of clicked. But that's kind of a long story.
No, that's
Can I-
awesome. That helps.
Can I tell
gives-
a brief little story
Please.
about when she had the kidney stones?
Yes.
This goes to appreciation. So, we had moved here from Monroe, and I didn't have any clients. I moved.
So you went from Monroe. Why were you in Monroe?
I was doing community-based counseling where I would go to people's homes,
That's right.
children that were at risk of like going to a detention center. So I would go to their homes and I would provide family counseling. I had a 2.5 hour radius around Monroe, and I just drove all over the place at all hours of the night. Because I was on call 24/7. That was actually a pretty stressful
Okay.
job.
I want to circle back with that, but keep going with your story.
Oh, well, yeah.
So you moved here from Monroe.
So we moved here from Monroe, and that's actually a crazy story how that happened. Can I tell that story first?
Please.
So we're in Monroe, and we had our second child, and money was so tight we couldn't. I was going to have to take a second job, and then so we started praying, Lord, okay, please help us see what we're supposed to do. And my wife kept saying, Tyler, I think you should call Lee Smith. And Lee was a pastor at Pine Lake at the time. Oh, well, he had been a pastor when Jamie and I were newly married, and that's where we went when we first got married in Jackson. And he had actually baptized Jamie and I. We got kind of rebaptized. to kind of do something to do for several reasons. But we got and he was one to baptize us, so we had established a little bit of a relationship, but 10 years had passed.
Wow.
So I'd say, no, 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 I'm not gonna call him. That's like embarrassing. It made me too uncomfortable.
Right.
Um, but she would bring it up once a month, and I was, But one day we are in Jackson, Mississippi, and I'm in we're at the Children's Museum, and my kids and wife are downstairs, and I'm upstairs. So I hop in the elevator, and I'm all by myself, and then this random dude just walks in the elevator, and then he starts talking to me. He's like, "Hey," he goes, "Dude, what do you do for work?" I say, "Oh, I'm a therapist in Monroe, Louisiana." And then he just goes, "You need to call a man named Lee Smith. I think he would really like to speak to you." I was like, "Whoa." And so the next week I called Lee and he did remember me. And then we had a good conversation. He gave some advice about like starting a private practice in Monroe. And then 3 days after that phone call, I was walking in for a promotion interview at my current job. And right an hour before I walked in, I was driving in the countryside of outside of Monroe. And I get a text and he goes, from Lee. He goes, "Hey man, I didn't tell you this on the phone the other day, but I have been actively praying for a male therapist in Oxford, Mississippi, and you literally called me. Would you and your family be open to moving to Oxford?" Yeah. And so I said yes. And then that's basically how we ended up here. And so we get here and we're living in a rental that's very tiny. It's basically this just a little bit larger than this room because we moved in March and it's no rentals. We didn't know any of that. And where the place was, I was working late at night, and my wife had a couple situations that kind of scared her where people would come banging on the door and at weird hours, like something was going on. But we were locked into the lease, and we said, "Okay, we're here. Um, we I don't know when my income will be enough where we could purchase a home, so we're just gonna make this place the best we can, and we're going to pray that the Lord would open up a way for us to move." And we just started tending to the house, making little adjustments, and praying that the Lord would make some kind of way. And then one night, we had some friends that were going to come in town, and I just got this prompt, and I started going through the whole house, and I took all the cords that were on the ground, and I put them 6 inches on above our wall, and I strung them where they were all above the wall, and I just was doing it. And Jamie said, "Tyler, why are you doing that?" I said, "I don't know. I'm supposed to." And then that night, we woke up at 2 in the morning and the whole house was flooded. But there was that much water that had a water pipe had burst and had flooded the house. And but none of our stuff got damaged because the cords. And then the next morning, the landlord, he's an awesome dude. He might go to your church, maybe I'm not sure. Burke, go to y'all's church.
I don't think so.
Okay. He goes to Christ Press. I'm not sure. But we the landlord comes and he's kind of a quiet man and he just walks, looks at all the damage, all the flooding, and he goes, "Well, do y'all want to move?" We said, "Yes, we would." And then he moved us into this place and he kept our way super nice place, kept our rent the same. But right after that was when Jamie had all these kidney stone issues. So she had multiple procedures, and I was doing everything for the family and going to work and moving because of the flood because she was totally out of commission. And then the one night I was just beyond my limit. I'd gotten the kids down, everything was situated, and I had this thought, I was like, "Oh, finally I'm gonna get some me time." And as soon as I thought that, Jamie said, "Tyler, will you go get me an ice pack?" And I was like, I was like, "Gosh, one more thing I gotta do." And so I went and stomped down the stairs and got it. I walked upstairs and I literally tossed it. I said, "Here," like that. But as I did that, she grabbed my hand and then she goes and she looked at me in the eyes and she said, um, Tyler, thank you. You've taken such good care of me and our family. And when she expressed that appreciation, it totally evaporated all that pent up stuff. I was like, oh, I could go another month. But man, it just gave me so much life. That's why I think appreciation is so powerful.
Mm.
When you speak to somebody like that and it's genuine, it just gives life to the person hearing it. Just like when that person put her hand on you and said, hey, I noticed this, and it communicated care. Like you cannot put words to how significant those type of moments are.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think that's so incredibly well said. And the story that you wrapped around with appreciation, um, because what I realized is once you can appreciate a person and it's genuine, people see it when it's not. It's not.
Oh
It
yeah.
is not good
Mm,
when it's
mm,
not. But once they
mm,
appreciate the genuineness and the yeah, they can go. All of a sudden, the weight of what they were feeling, like you
mhm,
described,
mhm.
is like, dude,
Oh
I can go another mile. When we going?
yeah.
It's the
Mhm.
great. I think that's so fascinating
It's
as a fitness coach. Like I
mm,
have clients in here, and then it's like, and they down themselves. So I'm just like, man, I appreciate you doing this. You've done this. It's like, I missed all
mm,
my workouts. Like for instance, I had a client say, I
mm,
missed, 50% of my
mm,
workouts. I'm like, that's true. Like we have the data. You've
mm,
missed 50% of your workouts this year.
mm,
How many workouts did you do last year? Well, I didn't work out last year.
mm,
So you did over 100 workouts this year. You did 0 last year.
mm.
Don't you think that's progress?
Bam. It
And they're just
is.
like, you're right.
And you feel good. Yeah, I was in a disc golf tournament. I used to play disc golf competitively and I'd travel around. I was very into it. At one point, my wife said it felt like I was having an affair. So we definitely revisited that with disc golf. I was so into it. And then I made the mistake and I said, she goes, you're playing like 3 or 4 times a week. And I said, Jamie, I don't think you understand. I'd play 7. She did not like it. But I was in a disc golf tournament and this dude misses a putt. It's called a chain out. Wasn't his fault at all. And then it rolls like 60 feet away from the basket. It was a putt for me to you, chains out, rolls all the way down. I was like, man, buddy, that stinks. I said, hey, I'm pulling for you. You got this next putt. And then he goes and he makes the huge putt. He goes, dude, like you got me there.
Mm,
You just acknowledging and then pumping me up because I needed that. Because he had his head down, like, God, so unfair. But then that little pump up, and I appreciate that he said that. I was like, man, because he's my competitor, but I want to see people do their
that's right.
best. Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah. But no, appreciation, huge. Validation, huge. But it's what in the busyness of life, that's the stuff people tend to forget
Mm,
to do because they're going so fast. One thing I talk about with couples all the time is like, if you're just living your life, you're driving to work, you're in the bed, or you're out doing something, and you have a thought about your spouse that's positive and it's something you appreciate it about them, you want to always tell them that because everyone loves hearing and being reminded of that. And it was so funny. One day I was talking about that in a session about how that's something my wife and I practice. And then it was my lunch break, and I looked at my phone, and Jamie had sent me a text message, and it was like, "Man, I was just thinking about what happened the other week, and I felt so loved and cared for when you did blank and blank." I was like, "Oh,
it's like, please give me another snack.
there's
Give me a
more."
snack.
But it feels
It
good to
does.
know that. So I kind of view it like you don't want to miss opportunities for wins.
Mm,
And when you think something positive about something that's true and you appreciate it and it was helpful or whatever, you want to tell your friends or family, your spouse that because it's a win and it's good.
yeah.
It's good for the relationship. It's good for them. It's good for you to share it. It just you want to maximize those wins. But when you're like, oh, okay, you don't tell anybody, you miss an opportunity.
Yeah. Um, before I forget, I want to circle back to when you were in West Monroe or just
Monroe,
Monroe.
but I was in West Monroe a
Okay.
lot. That's
So
where the Duck Dynasty stuff is.
I assumed you were Duck Dynasty. That's
Oh yeah,
good.
grow up in now.
Now tell me that experience was like, and what do you feel like you learned from that in general about just family dynamics? And do you feel
Mm,
like those are good takeaways for us to consider that you've
yeah.
seen just because you're dealing with the same types of problems, kids going away, and there's got to be some type of pattern you're seeing.
Oh yeah. I use this family systems model. I'm blanking on the name of it right now. Um, but basically, it was a patterns that families follow patterns. That job in Monroe, I've loved all my jobs. The job at the hospice, where I learned a lot about life and being present and talking, not avoiding the hard topics. In the community based counseling place, it was a place called the Center for Children and Families. And that place did such a good job about making the office like a safe haven. They had ping pong tables and board games, and there was always somebody around if you needed to flesh out a difficult case. And they did a huge community aspect where they were always pumping life into their staff. And then they would then, from that position, you would then get sent out all across the community into some just beyond difficult circumstances and scenarios. But from that job, I learned the value of that, having a the culture of a workplace and the type of work we did was very hard because some of the situations would, I mean, it's like a 8-year old getting raised by their great great grandparents, like an 8-year-old getting raised by like an 80-year-old.
Mm,
And the 8-year-old is like self-harming himself and looking up all kinds of stuff on the computer, and the 80-year-olds are multiple generations removed from any type of technology. And then all types of dysfunctional family stuff with drugs and trauma galore. But that job I learned that though you might not be able to do a lot of therapy interventions, the most important thing at the end of the day is just joining people with where they're at.
mm,
And because I mostly saw children and I would see the parents when they would join, but uh just seeing a child that's been through ungodly difficult things, but having a glimpse of like the life pop back and knowing that that's possible long term. But it was a difficult job because circumstantially, the therapist is just a temporary part of people's lives. So the heart behind it was you help change the family system, and then the family then provides what the therapist is temporarily providing. The therapist is enters in, you're a regulated, safe person that helps people kind of process through stuff. And then you're supposed to leave, but you help them get to that state too. Unfortunately, that's just very difficult. So it was a hard job. It was a great job. I learned a lot about the value of like, again, meeting people where they're at,
mm,
but also, again, not overtaking responsibility for other people's stuff. Because if you start doing that, you could develop like some hero complex where you think it's all on you. And then you got all the pressure. And then no one some people operate well under a certain amount of pressure, but that amount of pressure where you basically elevate yourself to like God level, if I don't do this, nobody will. That's like a dangerous thought.
oh my
We all
gosh,
can
people
have
say
it.
that all the
Yeah.
time. Who else is
It's
gonna do it?
yeah. It's a dangerous because it forces you to elevate yourself maybe more than who God actually creates you to be. But it was kind of it'd be hard to remain in that sweet spot of the confident, humble because the situations were so very dire.
Yeah.
It was sad. I saw a side of uh the world that I just did not grow up in.
Mm,
And my heart really breaks for the children.
yeah.
But man, great place to work. And I enjoyed the people I saw, just very hard circumstances. But it was a nonprofit, and also had to. Uh, I won't give you the amount, but one time things were very tight for my wife and I, and now with two kids financially, and it was so tight that we had this accountant, and I had filed our taxes, but after he had filed them, I'd forgotten to send him something. And I said, "Hey, I'm so sorry, I forgot to send you this. I don't know if this impacts our return." And he goes, "Oh, you made so little money that doesn't matter at all. Like, I don't need that." So it just was, again, I was about to have to take on a second
Yeah.
job, which conflicted with my values of being present with my family as well.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that'll take me further away from my family. And then the Lord opened a path for me to come to the Cornerstone Counseling where I work now. And
Wow.
so it was neat. But yeah, man, it was a special place in Monroe, Louisiana. Center for Children and Families. If you're a counseling intern, great place to work.
Yeah.
Best people in the world
Mm.
who genuinely care
Yeah.
and were passionate about the mission of that or agency. I'm going on and on. It was a very special place,
Yeah. And
and so was the hospice.
really,
Mhm. It was a three ladies owned the hospice. It wasn't a corporate owned hospice, and they did what their passion was: do whatever's best for your patient, even if you lose financially, knowing they have a business that they have to run, but they live that out time and time and time again. If a patient needed something that wasn't really allowable that we could bill or whatever, they just paid for that so that patient would have the comfort care that they needed. And so the patients got the highest level of care. And I appreciated that because they did lose money they would make, but ultimately I'm sure they did fine. But that approach, it was unwavering, like, we do what's best for the patient.
yeah.
And that was and they were family first. If something was going on with my family or someone was sick and I needed to call in, and I'd be like, "I'm so sorry. I know it's day of. My wife is at work. She can't take off, but the daycare called and my child's throwing up." They would just say, "Family first.
Mm.
Your work will be here tomorrow."
Yeah.
And man, and just the nature of the job was really powerful too. But I was blessed to work in just really great places.
It's so much easier to work in a great place, even when you're struggling financially,
Mhm.
than making a whole bunch of money and hating your job. Gosh, like it's like, yeah, what problem would you trade? You'd probably be fulfilled at a more of a good career, but
And what's been interesting is now the Lord has blessed
mm,
us, and but it's so interesting is though monetarily, I mean, when we were in seminary, I was working a couple jobs. My wife was working three. I was a full time student. I had another job at another great place. It was a sporting goods store where I did deliveries and I cleaned the facilities, and was worked in the warehouse. And they great office management there too. But the uh things were so tight. Jamie, my wife, she's more like the really on top of it. Like, I could only have one box of cereal for the week, and I had to stretch it. I'm a big cereal person. I had to stretch it out to make it ration it out so it would make the week. And at the end of the week, we'd go to this grocery store called Save a Lot, where you have to pay for your bags, but you could get the groceries for real affordable. So we would go to Walmart and get their free bags and then go to Save a Lot. But it was such a fun time because we knew we were doing what God had called us to do. And it exposed in me, I had this assumption, if we follow the Lord, it'll all just roll out. And so I left my family's business. We didn't have jobs. We just moved in this tiny 400 square foot apartment in New Orleans. And neither one of us have work. And we're like, we're just here. And then we ended up finding jobs, and it took over a year for our house to sell in Jackson. And I remember one day I was like, God, I don't trust you. We're where you're supposed to be. And I know I said it was going to be fun to go on this adventure, but this is just too hard. And then I was like, Lord, I don't trust you at all. And I'm really hungry, and I only have 20 cents. And God, would you please provide me a Snickers bar or a Kit Kat bar? And I was like, but I don't only have 20 cents. And then I was driving on the golf course. I worked at a golf course as well where I dug ditches and cut the grass and stuff. And I was driving back to our little shop, and there's a vending machine. I was like, I'm just going to the vending machine. And I walked up to the vending machine, and I was like, okay, I'm just pressing the change button. And I pressed the change button, and I had the 20 cents, and the exact amount of change I needed to buy the Kit Kat bar came out. I was like, oh.
Did you eat the Kit Kat bar?
I ate it. I put all that. I don't know if it was 75 cents or maybe it was 55 cents dropped out. I put it in, and I ate the Kit Kat bar. I was like, thank you, God. You're good. And then our house actually sold on right before Thanksgiving Day. So we were very thankful.
Oh,
But anyway, yeah, I was like, I wanted this adventure, but now that it's hard, I don't know if I really want it.
yeah.
But it was great, man. Yeah, so we kind of Jackson, New Orleans, Monroe to Oxford, and we've been here for 2019.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you're here. We need counselors. We need people pouring into people. Where can people find you?
Oh,
This is gonna be good.
I work at a place called Cornerstone Counseling. It's here in town. There's several other therapists there. Some people do virtual sessions. I just do in person. And I have like a YouTube channel and an Instagram page, just like Tyler Stacy Counseling. I just mostly on there just post content about marriages and stuff. But in my private practice, I see individuals, trauma, and couples as well. But that's mostly what I post.
And you're working on some
online.
educational pieces eventually.
I'm working on a course, a happy relationship course that's got that model I've been working on of what can kill and what can build a relationship. And once I do that, I'll be making posts and stuff about it on my social media
Sweet.
page, which that's something new for me. Every 5 years, I like to push myself to learn a new skill that's out of my comfort zone. And so 2 years ago, I was trying to figure out what it was. And I was like, I guess you could try the social media stuff because I've been off social media for like since Jamie and I got married. Because I just didn't
So you're used to it.
didn't love it. And I don't, but now I was like, well, that's what I'm going to do. For 5 years, I'm going to commit to trying to grow and push myself to learn that skill. And it's a totally different world out there.
Well, Tyler, I really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Yeah, dude.
We have to do a part 2 because it was like so much information. I'm just like processing still. I'm even still processing the information of like the course you're working on and talking to you and getting the privilege to see your office and your setup. Like it has been, I'm very encouraged. I try to,
Dude, thanks. I really appreciate it.
yeah. Well, I'm going to pray for you and then we'll end on that.
Awesome.
All right. Dear Father, thank you for opportunity for just me and Tyler to meet and do the podcast as just brothers in Christ. I just pray a blessing over his family, over his kids, and over his wife. And thank you for bringing them to Oxford. Thank you for your faithfulness to the call that you have on their lives and just the faithfulness that you've shown during their journey. Just pray for blessings and wisdom as he continues to counsel people well in Oxford and serve the community well. And I just pray for his migraines, Lord, Lord, please take them away or find a resource where he can get help or needs to get those fulfilled or met, Lord. And thank you for his encouragement. Thank you for the conversation. And we pray that this conversation blesses others. In Jesus' name, amen.